Yeah, it's definitely a good problem to have. Well, there's no weed in the grinder. All right, well, let's just put some weed in the grinder, you know? Um, well, hey, just before we get into it, I want to remind our listening audience that this is episode number 293 of the Chillinois podcast. And if you look on Spotify or SoundCloud or wherever you stream the Chillinois podcast, you might be confused because the numbers are out of order. You know, you might be listening to 293 right now, and maybe 292 and 291 are consecutively there. But then maybe the numbers jump around and are out of order. It's because we release all of our episodes in order on Patreon. Then we release those episodes at a later date for absolutely free on all streaming platforms. Patreon is the best way to support our podcast. It only costs $3 a month. You get exclusive access to all episodes of the Chillinois podcast. And yeah, like I say, it's just the best way to support the work that we're doing. If you're not able to do that, I'll take your support by way of a positive review. Give us a thumbs up or share it with your friends and family. You know, tell them that we're talking about drugs and cool things on the Chillinois podcast. And I would greatly appreciate your support. Today's conversation kind of started during episode number 291. So if you'd like to get some further context and other perspectives, start with episode 291 with Ethan. Then you can go to episode 292 with Allison. Today, episode 293 with DJ Davis. DJ, welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's going great. Very happy to be able to talk about my experience and hopefully shed a little bit more light on, what it's like to be not just within the cannabis industry, but some of the struggles that I think some people are coming across since it is such a new industry. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess do you want to start more broadly with just like some of the issues you've all faced, and then because I get the sense that you're kind of going through your own individual circumstances. So I don't know how best you want to approach this, but
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'll just kind of introduce myself a little bit in my
sure.
situation. Like, I've been, with the company for like, let's see, it's January 2022. So, I mean, it's been about a year and a half going on. And, I will say one of the things that I commonly hear from a lot of people, especially at the location that I work at, is that the people that we work with is really what makes the job fantastic. Um, and like if you look at any of our reviews online, it's probably the thing that we get reviewed the most on is how great the staff is, how chill everybody is when you have a conversation with them. And truthfully, that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to even get into the cannabis industry is because, I have Crohn's disease, as well as I'm autistic. And, for me, cannabis has been such a huge part of my life. It's really helped me with um, being able to like tamper down some of my symptoms, kind of relax my mind, think a little clearer sometimes. Um, and so it just, I wanted to have a space where I could talk with other people, share my experiences. And truthfully, I think when I actually did the interview, that was because they do like big group interviews with people. So that was kind of I remember like my experience going into it was kind of interesting because I have never done a group interview before, and I was sat down in a room with like 8 other people, and everybody seemed to have really good answers, and I felt like I wasn't going to get hired because my
Oh
answers were
wait, you were like literally. So I thought you were meant like you got that sat down at a table and 8 people are interviewing you. You mean like other people were being interviewed?
Oh no, it was one person interviewing 8 people.
Holy
So they would
crap!
like round robin. Yeah, they would round robin at a table. They had us in different rooms. And and so it'd be one interviewer who would basically ask the same question and then would like point to you and say, okay, well now what's your response? What's your response? So it was like very especially for somebody who's autistic and like I'm not good with social interaction. Um, that was something that was kind of weird and different for me. And I really, I'm hearing some of the answers that people are giving. Like I had this one guy in my group who I guess he used to be like a bouncer at a restaurant or a bar or something here in Chicago. So he just kept saying like, oh yeah, man, like I just love weed. And like, I just think it'd be cool to talk to other. And she was like, well, what, like, she would ask questions like, well, how would you relate to people, about cannabis? And he'd be like, well, I smoke it. I'm like, okay. Whereas my answers would be more like, well, I consume cannabis to help me with my disease and such and such. And it was funny because when I started saying it out loud, I started noticing after about one or two questions, people started molding their answers after I would speak. They would start molding it after what I would say. So,
Sure.
uh, and I don't even know if any of the people got hired besides myself in my group, but at least not at my location. But yeah, again, it all just kind of goes back to like, I came into the experience with an expectation. And I think that that's important. I think it's important to set those expectations up front. I think they did a great job, the company in general, setting that expectation. And, if you look at all of their literature online, it all says kind of the same tone, something along the lines of like, hey, we want to be, we want to grow together with like-minded individuals. We want to make it not such a taboo thing. And we just want to kind of have a good time while doing it, kind of building up this industry from the ground up. And that's what really attracted me to Sunnyside in general. But after the first couple months, it was, again, me being autistic, it was very jarring at first coming into a building that had 60 plus people. And most of them were there almost every day. Cause this was, I know in the previous episode, some people talked about the bathroom situation, which I'll touch on that in a minute. But before that, I was hired before that really went down. And so I got a taste of what it was like to, I worked with people, and I won't, dive too far into this, but, it was kind of talked about, and I kind of like heard some rumblings, but like we had people that were on very different sides of the political spectrum, you know? Um, and if you've even been into our location, you'll know that we have a pretty liberal cast of members on our team. Not that it needs to be that way, but it, again, another thing that really opened me up to kind of being like, wow, this is a really cool experience. Like I've worked with people that I don't or that I don't agree with, um, when it comes to certain political or just, a lot of different beliefs. But it was really cool just to be able to be like, hey, like we all have a common goal here. We all have a common love here. And at the end of the day, like we don't need to talk about all those things. We leave them at the door. And we all just kind of mesh and vibe together. And so I got a really good taste of that within the first couple of months. Um, and then it really was because I started in January. It was, I think, the bathroom situation that was kind of the catalyst to pop off a bunch of other situations. And I've heard from, other people that there were other situations that had happened. There were rumors of, people of color maybe not getting certain opportunities that, other people were getting. I can't speak to that because I wasn't there, but it was kind of like an eyebrow raiser because we had, like a lady who was a person of color, and she had been a supervisor since, I mean, she was like the longest tenured employee there. And she kept, asking people like, why am I not being moved up into management? Like I've applied multiple times. And she's no longer with the company, but she was asking those questions herself. And every time I talked to her, I mean, she was probably the most beloved shift leader that we had there. And so I kind of started, I started raising my eyebrow at that point too, and saying, okay, well, doesn't necessarily mean that there's, some conspiracy going on, but it is kind of something to kind of keep on your radar, especially being a person of color myself. but yeah, so, I think again, the bathroom situation that really kind of started a lot of this, the animosity between the unionized members of Sunnyside versus the corporate, like, managers and corporate themselves as an entity. I'd say that started somewhere around like April or May of last year. And I remember, again, because this was such a big situation for me, multiple things had happened. I know a few of my coworkers kind of already talked about this, but um, they ended up shutting the upstairs lounge down. I really enjoyed my time being able to go up there. They had couches, and it definitely wasn't the safest environment. I mean, there was like floorboards that were buckled, literally like a TP tent, that people were tripping over all the time. I think when they had an inspector come, they said that something was wrong with the skylight, but I never saw any issues with the skylight, but apparently they saw some type of issues. I don't know. And that's, from what we were told, is what condemned the upstairs area. Um, I mean, I knew that there was leaks and things like that all the time too, but again, it was a nice vibe to be able to get away, to be able to step off the sales floor, from dealing with customers all the time, and be able to go upstairs and like take your lunch break and just sit there. People were taking naps on their breaks. I mean, it was like our own cannabis version of like a Google office. you know, we had our little pod set up in a corner or something. People would go up there and play games or, whatever. And so it was just really chill vibes. And again, the bathroom situation happened. They had to close the upstairs bathrooms for us, closed the whole lounge upstairs eventually, locked it off. And you know, I think the reoccurring theme that you're going to hear from me is that, I have previous managerial experience. So I've been a manager in a past job, a corporate sales manager as well, for 2 years at a pretty big name company. And I had never had any managerial experience going into that. I was actually reached out to via LinkedIn for that job. And I think it's just interesting that, like, to me, I think it's just the way that you handle situations, that really sets the tone. And I just think that a lot of situations haven't been handled the best. They have us take these trainings where they say, hey, we want to hear your experiences. We want to, we have an open door policy. We want you to tell us when things are not, feeling the right way. Because again, that is the expectation coming into this. That's why I wanted to start with that, because that is the expectation when going into the very first interview. That is how they set the expectation. We want to hear from you. We want to make this a chill vibe, chill environment. So it's just very off-putting to have managers where you're having these issues, you go and you tell them about them. And so kind of circling this back to like the upstairs lounge area, I just came into work one day and they were like, yeah, it's closed. And they put a padlock on it. I'm like, a padlock? They don't trust us enough to just say like, hey, you can't go up there anymore or whatever. I ended up hearing that, I guess, an AIC had gone up there on one of his breaks. He had dealt with a difficult customer or something, and he needed to blow off some steam. He went up there, and this was after they had already told us that it was closed down. They let the dude go, and he was a fantastic AIC. Everybody actually
Agent
really
in charge for people that are listening.
Yes,
Agent
sorry.
in charge.
Yes.
No, it's all good. It's all
Agent
good.
in charge. I call them like supervisors because that's just what people know them as better. But yeah, this guy, I mean, people absolutely love this guy. And to my knowledge, he had no strikes, no warnings, no nothing. He makes one mistake. He goes up there just thinking, hey, I just had a really difficult interaction. Especially being a supervisor, they're given a lot of responsibility. I've never seen, again, I can only speak to my experience being a manager. I had a assistant, when I was a manager. I barely gave her stuff to do. I mean, and I don't mean that to sound so like it's not like I didn't trust her. I knew she could do a fantastic job, and I did push her on certain things, but like, I'm that kind of person where like, if I'm the manager and I'm making more money, I feel like I should be taking on more responsibility. That's just in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe I'm a one-off person on that. I don't know. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just, it was just odd to me that like, first, the AICs in general are given so much responsibility in there. I mean, they're in charge of, closing the place down, opening the place up. And keep in mind, there's usually a manager, but to be fair, I don't really know what the managers do. There's not a lot of
Don't they
transparency.
have to sign off on all orders or something too? Like, is that the person that when they're like bag check, the agent in charge comes over and like signs the receipt? Is that who does that?
They did. I mean, they did kind of go away with that. We would have the 420 checks, so we would
Oh
kind
yeah,
of raise our hand
420.
and say 420, and people actually kind of like that. It was very awkward and weird for me first starting, but I got a hang of it too. And again, me being just like a quieter person in general, I'd be like 420,
Yeah.
and then even they'd be like, "Huh." Um, but yeah, I mean, they've actually cut down a lot of our AICs, and that's a whole nother thing. I'll take a quick side note on that. They had an AIC, they were telling us, because they took away the whole 420 checks, like double checking everyone's orders. They said, okay, well, we don't need as many AICs because that's one less responsibility that they have. Okay, fair. And then I asked the question to our district manager and said, well, then how many AICs are we looking to have? Because I think we had at that time like eight or nine. So we had a good amount. And they said, well, we only want to have like 6. Okay. So then a few people had found better opportunities elsewhere for either more money, better benefits, whatever. Eventually it got down to 5, and we saw a posting go up for an AIC position. Well, I mean, there was like 20 people that signed up wanting to be an AIC, myself included. We waited around for a couple weeks, and then eventually one of my good buddies that works there, he actually went up to one of the managers one day and was like, "Hey, what's going on with this position? Like, it's been a few weeks. You guys had us sign up for this. You had a deadline. It's been a few weeks past this deadline when the cutoff was. When are we going to hear about at least starting the interview process, how it's going to be handled, whatever." And he was told, "Oh, we're not going to do the AIC position anymore." So they actually never made an official announcement. We all just heard it from this guy who heard it from a manager. And so one by one, a lot of us who had been signing up, and even some people who didn't sign up, they started going to the manager and saying like, "Hey, is this true? Is this?" And I think eventually it got put into a pre-roll meeting, which is just what we call our like morning meetings before we open the store. Um, I think it eventually got put in there, but again, this was like well over a month after having the position not only up, but closed for any new signups. And, so it's just kind of disheartening. Again, it's like a reoccurring trend of like, why is it so hard to handle these types of situations and have this transparency with your staff? Like, what are you afraid of? Especially because like, I don't think I can not say this, but within our union contract, like we have it set up where we can't strike, we can't have a stoppage of work
Yeah, you're allowed to say that. Other people have said it too.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, uh, yeah, I don't think there's like a privacy clause or anything.
No, no.
So it's just like, again, you have like I guess in my mind, I'm like, to me it doesn't make sense if I put myself in their shoes. Like, what are you scared of? Like, what are we gonna do by giving us uh bad news? It is what it is. It's a business at the end of the day, and I understand that. I think there's a way to handle that, and there's a way to give bad news to your staff and your employees, and still be able to turn around and say, hey, you know what? I know a lot of you guys were looking forward to this, leadership position, but um it's something that the company doesn't want to move forward with. And I want to keep, and even just giving us that reassurance and saying, hey, I know there's about 20 of you that were interested in this position. The next time that the position comes available, I'm going to give preference to those people first because, this position had, whatever, and just do it that way. Or, something to kind of set people at ease and kind of say like, hey, I know this is a bummer. And I know that you guys were really looking forward to this, but moving forward, let's try to keep morale up. Let's, I want to make it right. Is something, we never really got that. It's almost like anytime that something bad happens to us as the employees, and we rightfully so have some type of concern about it and say something, it's, I haven't been there in the past few weeks. I've actually been in the hospital the past couple of months. Just came out of like a major surgery, but I've been seeing people say like, they've been hearing from managers that they're being called whiny children or something like that, or pouty children or something along those lines. And I believe it because I've heard those things firsthand, so, again, and this just circles back to the whole upstairs lounge situation. They fired this dude who everybody loved. He had like no warnings, no nothing. Why could it not be a situation where, again, if I was in charge, I would sit down with the dude and say, hey, we told you everybody that like this is condemned for safety reasons or whatever the reasons are. We know that you went up there. We got to write you up for that, because corporate wants us to or whatever. I mean, if it was me, I probably wouldn't write somebody up for that in general. Like I'd just be like, hey, please don't do that because you're supposed to be a leader. People look up to you and they're going to follow your example. Please don't do that. But if you really feel like you need to write somebody up for it, okay, sit down, have that meeting with them and make sure they understand the importance of why they're implementing some practices or some, whatever's, in place, some rules, or some red tape in general. But again, this, no warning, no nothing. Everybody loves this guy. Everybody looks up to him, and he makes one mistake and boom, chopping block. He's gone. And from there, I think that's where we started seeing a very quick spiral downward. We had the bathroom situation. I brought up multiple times, hey, I don't feel comfortable because I have Crohn's disease, which I'll explain it just for people who don't know. It's a gastrointestinal disease, which is why I was in the hospital. I had to get some of my intestines cut out and like the really infected part and kind of sewn back together. And so for me, like if I got to go to the bathroom, and there's a few people actually that work there that have similar diseases or disabilities. And so, I have it put, like when I first started there, a lot of people don't know, but when you have a disability like that, I always strongly urge people, and maybe this is my quick PSA to everyone out there. If you have a disability, please, please, please set the expectation up front with your managers. Let them know it's not something that you should be ashamed of. It's not something that you should be hiding. If anything, it's something that you really, really, really need to make sure that managers understand, and that they know how to best try to help you. And this is going to come back up later with my story, because, the managers, not every manager knows, as I've come to find out, like even what autism means, or they have a preconceived notion of what it means. If you have a disability and you have it diagnosed from a doctor or whatever, do the extra couple steps to get accommodations put in place. And it doesn't have to be a lengthy list of accommodations. For me, like I had accommodations set up so that I could have an extra 15 minutes on my lunch break, so that I could have extra leniency with coming in late to work or even calling off, because they have a pretty strict like point system where if you call in late or if you are running late or don't give enough heads up if you're going to be calling off, you'll accrue points. And then obviously if you have enough points, you get fired. And a lot of places have a similar system like that. That obviously is very hard for me to sometimes abide by because, again, with my disease, sometimes if I got to go to the bathroom, I got to go right away. And so I brought these concerns up pretty early on to the management group, and other people as well who have similar disabilities at work. And I think that's where we started getting a lot of that friction building up, because the management, I just don't think they knew how to handle so many people with disabilities, especially disabilities that are being affected by a situation that they really didn't have a lot of control over. And again, this to me really comes back to like, it's how you handle these situations. It's how you talk to people, and treat them really just like people. Um, People that have things going on in their lives. Like I had no say in whether I got this disease or not. It's something that unfortunately I got diagnosed when I was like 13 years old, um, and I'm just going to have to live with it for the rest of my life. And it is what it is. Um, but, we started having these issues with the bathrooms, and, they closed the upstairs bathrooms to us, shortly after. And so that really limited us to just having the 2 bathroom situation. And as I know other people have talked about, I mean, I have pictures. I have, and I don't mind showing them if you want to see them, or if that's, whatever. But like, I have so many pictures of times where our bathrooms were being flooded. We have little drain holes, on the floor. And so we had sewage coming up. And it was just not breathable air sometimes. You go in there and it just literally reeks of sewage, like not that there is a good sewage, but just really bad sewage smell. Um, and people just like people, I kid you not, if you ask if you ask half the people at the store what bathroom they would prefer, there's an answer to that.
Well,
There's-
okay.
there-
Let's, what's funny is that we showed, I didn't realize you could do this. I can actually virtually tour the store. Let's do it.
oh, hell
Um, so,
yeah.
uh, so what's funny is here I am in the corner. They showed us here's where the consultations happen, right? Along
Yeah,
this wall here.
yeah.
And there's where all the bud tending stations are off in the far corner. So we're gonna turn around and look at the bathrooms. You want to see something funny?
Oh God.
Out of order.
Out of order. Yep. I mean, God, and those signs fall off.
Yeah, it looks like it's barely hanging on.
Yeah.
I can't go down
Because
the
they,
hallway, unfortunately, but that's
because
as
of all
far
the
as I can
times
see.
that they would have it fixed. They have a plumber come. I mean, it was every single week they would have multiple times a week they would have a plumber come, tell them, "Hey, we're waiting for this specialty part." I mean, I don't know what kind of toilets they're buying for this place, but the amount of times that I've heard that they're waiting for a specialty part, I'm not a plumber, but I didn't know there could be so many specialty parts on a toilet. um, and I guess I just have to take their word for it and believe them. But the amount of times that they got to rip that sign off, and you saw it's kind of like peeled up because they rip it off. Okay, the bathrooms are good, and then a few days later, okay, actually, you got to put the sign back up. And like, and it's like, God, how many times do we got to go through this? And I don't know if it's truthfully just the plumbers that they're hiring, or if it's just like a shred of truth that's being kept from us on what the real issue is. Because, we started getting different, I don't know how much other people have talked about this, but, we started getting different stories too. We had managers telling us, oh, well, it's because of feminine products that are being flushed down the toilet. Okay. Well, I mean, we do have signs. I mean, from day one, there's been signs up in the bathroom saying, "Hey, don't flush this stuff." But I get it. There might be either some customers or maybe some employees who just aren't getting the picture, not connecting the dots, don't do that, whatever. Um, then we started hearing, no, it's something with the pipes. I mean, I got a whole explanation from a manager one day about how the pipes are on a slant going towards the main street, and how it gets backed up and there's a divot somehow like towards the front of the like check-in area
Yeah.
store, and that the divot had like an accumulation of like rocks and gravel and sand. I mean, I'm like, God, you guys know so much about these pipes, but somehow the toilets just can't be fixed. Like this has been a year-long battle and multiple plumbing companies, and somehow we just can't get this figured out. How did John Barleycorn have a business with multiple bathrooms and such? I mean, you gotta think like, You've
Give
got,
context because I didn't know what you meant by that. But somebody made a comment the other day and said that that's the Barleycorn building or something. Or
yeah, so
what?
John Barleycorn used to be a bar. I mean, that was the building used to be a bar called John Barleycorn. And, you know, there was, I mean, again, and I know, I think I watched yesterday and you had shown people how close our location is to Wrigley Field. So that location being a bar as well, anybody who's been Wrigley knows, I mean, the traffic there is just outrageous. I mean, especially on a game day, but even on a non-game day, you have so many people. I mean, it's a historical site, people out of town, out of country. I mean, we get a lot of people who come in and part of one of my duties being a wellness advisor there is, you're gonna have customers that are from different countries. I've had so many passports and international driver's license from so many different countries. So we get a lot of traffic and people that want to recreationally try out cannabis. And again, this all goes back to the expectation of what my job is as a wellness advisor. Like I love meeting new people, having those conversations with people that have either been smoking all their lives or people that have never smoked a day in their lives, not even touched the product. And they come in, and especially you get a really good mix of like young people, but we get a really good mix of old people too, or I should say older people. Um, I'm creeping very close to that 30 line, so I gotta be careful about saying old. um,
Me
I
too.
feel old, but again, you got people that are twice my age coming in and they've never touched it, and it's fantastic having those conversations. Those are probably my favorite days when I get to have conversations with people like that, because you get to just, especially being autistic, like one of my things that I do is I just info dump. I love to just, you come talk to me, you want to know something cool, I am just going to absolutely take a big dump on you with info and just let you know every single little thing. I want to talk to you about terpenes all day long. I want to talk to you about different cannabinoids that are in there. What's the difference between CBG, CBN, CBD? Just,
Sounds like you're fit for podcasting.
oh, I mean, oops, sorry,
Hey, that
Siri
happens
is
all the
trying to
time.
get in on this apparently.
Yeah,
I've been trying to start a podcast, but,
you
uh,
should. I was just trying to be funny, man. But you
oh,
should. Yeah, I've just been kind of sitting back and listening to you. You definitely. Anyways, keep going.
no,
You were
no,
laying it out. You were talking about how you like to just how that's who you are when people ask you about things that,
yeah.
just
I love to I just love to have, when it's something that's a special interest of mine. I love having that like info dump, type of
yeah.
conversation. And that's the thing. I mean, obviously, like, we're not best friends yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like if you get to know me, like that's the thing that about me is like, I could be very awkward, when you first get to meet me, but as soon as I open up and I start talking about something that I'm passionate about or something I love, I mean, it's going to be like I've known you my whole life. We're just going to start talking like we're best buddies since kindergarten. I'm going to tell you all my deepest, darkest ins and outs, secrets of, all of it. So again, those are my favorite days, when I get to work in the cannabis industry, is being able to talk to those people. So it really, upsets me to have these kinds of experiences and even have to, talk about these experiences, because at this point, as many others have kind of voiced, it just seems like, we continue to bring up these concerns. Um, and I'll talk about that actually right now. My biggest concern that I've been having is really with my disability and the way that I've been handled with that. But again, it's just the way that these concerns are being brought up, and we don't feel like we have, um, God, I hate saying safe space to like kind of bring it up, but it's true. It's kind of like we don't, it's not even just about a safe space. It's just like, how many times are we going to scream into the void, not just to, corporate, because that's kind of the hierarchy of how our um our processes go. Like they want us to talk to a supervisor and then advance it to a manager and then advance it to maybe a HR/ corporate level. And if it really don't feel like it's getting fixed there, then we should be taking it to the union. And we really got to a point where so many times we're going through these first couple of channels and we're just keep getting X, 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 Ventura sound system, whatever that Ventura sound is. It's just like we keep getting that from every single step up, and people just started skipping all the steps. They just started going straight to the union about every single little thing. And maybe that's where some of the animosity was built between us and the union. But the union honestly didn't really help us that much either. And I'll get into that in a second. But I definitely want to get to the main point for me. My personal experience, again, I went and talked to them about the bathroom situation. They had us, which is where it kind of all starts. I caused enough of a stink about it. And I think a few other people had reached out to some more federal channels like OSHA and said, hey, like, not necessarily to try to get the company in trouble, but more so to try to get some answers that we weren't getting from our management group, and saying, hey, this is a situation that we're being put through right now. Is this right? And is there any options, or like, is there anything that we can do about it? We all want to have a safe environment where we're not breathing in sewage. And like I said, we all started gravitating towards one of the only two bathrooms that were open, because it's the only one that didn't smell like sewage all the time, or had a bunch of sewage water coming up out of the floor all the time. I know some people were talking about the cleanliness, again, with me having a disease that's so easily swayed by getting sick. I mean, I have an autoimmune, it's classified as an autoimmune disease. So, getting sick for me hits a lot harder than getting sick for normal people. I've had, employees, coworkers, come up to me and say like, hey, look, I've got this new rash on my arm. We have those Dyson hand dryers where you kind of go like this. You stick your hand in and out like that. And I've got pictures on my phone many, many times where I've shown them and said, hey, can you tell the cleaning people they need to clean these dryers? Because when I show you these pictures, underneath, when you're looking at it, you've got just the front face, and then you've got the little hole here where you stick your hand down and go up and down. But up underneath that part, oh, it was moldy green, and it's just caked on. I don't want to get too TMI, but just hairs. I'm just going to leave it at that. Hairs of,
Sure.
and a
Pubic
variety
hair.
sort. Yeah. I mean, you got all sorts of like
All
random
sorts of
shit in
hair.
there.
Yeah.
You've got like fuzzies and just nasty, clumpy stuff.
Well, in
And it's,
those Dyson hand blades, I've heard, I'm not a fucking
oh, sure.
air hand drying scientist or whatever, or any type of scientist, but I've heard that those Dyson things, they blow so much fucking air that they're just basically blowing the stuff around the
Yeah,
bathroom.
all the particles
So, and
under
it's
it.
like I feel bad because you think you're making, like, we're making a good choice. We're giving these people a goddamn Dyson hand blade dryer. It's like it's the most expensive, worst choice from what I know. I could be wrong, folks. Google it. Um,
And you know what? And
but
I
it sounds like from what you've seen, it would the machine itself collected
yes,
gunk.
because I mean, it does have
It's
like
got like a
a
concave,
bottom
right?
part. So it's kind of like a U shape.
Yeah.
I'll give you a side view of it. Like this would be the part where you're sticking your hand down like that, and it's U-shaped like this. So it does have a bottom, and I feel like that's where it's bouncing up, like back those particles, back
Hmm.
up underneath like the crevices up here. And that's where, again, I'm
Oh,
having
dude, I
coworkers.
just Googled it, and this is like apparently maybe a common thing. Check this out.
Yeah, it looks about. I mean, that looks burnt.
It'll be a lot worse maybe than what you saw, but
I got pictures if you want to see real quick.
yeah, dude.
It's
Can
not
you
gonna take
are you
me.
able to share them on Zoom too, or maybe you can email them to me and then I can share them?
Yeah,
Yeah, send
I
me
could
your
always.
pictures of the bathroom and stuff.
Yeah, I'll send you
Let's
the
look at.
pictures, because I mean, I've got plenty of pictures. I mean, like this is the bottom corner. So the water would sling off into the corner as well. And so you've got like kind of, I'll send you a picture. I mean, in this picture, you got hairs, clumps of things, and then like a brownish yellow watery stuff leaking out kind of from the wall. Here underneath, this is the bottom part of the dryer. So you've got like those clumps I was talking about, and you can see it's like wet and mildewy. Again, another picture kind of that under barrel of the U-shaped part. I'll send you the pictures. And I've shown the picture. The only reason I even have those pictures with me is because the managers were asking for this information. They wanted this information from us. And not just me, they asked people all the time. They would say, hey, well, if you're seeing this, let us know. Okay, sure. I'll take pictures so you can see. And so I would, I'd bring up these concerns many, many times and say, hey, I got coworkers that are getting new rashes, like weird skin fungal infections on their wrists. That's probably not a good thing. Again, can't really connect those dots and say that that's why, but, after having that conversation with that coworker, they were like, yeah, like I go to work and I go home. Nothing really changes in my routine to where, I would be exposed to anything that would give me that, except for how disgusting the condition of those dryers are. So I could believe that. And so, eventually what the conclusion ended up being is they said, okay, well, we're going to get you guys free memberships to the UFC gym across the street. Okay. So I wasn't there actually the first like day or two that happened. I'd only heard about it through like a work group chat that we have. And I started seeing people say something about when you go over there to go use the restroom, they ask for all your information. So you have to sign in and provide all your information. So there was multiple issues that I had with this. I ended up telling them this. I told the managers, I said, hey, number one, I don't feel comfortable giving my information out to a third party. I don't see why I, have to give my personal information out. I mean, just listen to how crazy this sounds. I have to give out my personal information, my first name, my last name, my date of birth, my phone number, like all this information I have to give out to use a restroom while I'm working. Like that to me just sounds absolutely nuts. There should have been more of a conversation between management and UFC to say, hey, I understand you guys have these policies in place, but our people need to use the bathroom. And I don't think it's fair for us to have them have to sign in every time. I understand UFC's part of it too, though. I've been a part of a gym. It's probably a safety thing, truthfully, to know who's in the building, using their lavatories or whatever and whatever. I get that, but then there should have been an alternative discussion about either a different area or different business we can use, or just something in general, getting us porta potties we can use, something to make it a better experience than having to give out our personal information just to use a bathroom. The second part of it that I had issue with is having to explain to them, which, when you start getting into like the legality of, diseases and disabilities within the workplace, like I should never have to explain my disability to anybody, especially management. It's really should be a conversation of, I have this disability. I can have a doctor kind of explain to you, the way that affects me and how I work. And yep, there's UFC record. But, and this kind of goes into my last thing is I had to explain to them how I am not going to make it going out through multiple checkpoints, multiple doors, going across the street. Again, I have a literal disease that makes it so that when I got to go, I got to go. Make it across the street, and UFC is not, you got to go up either the stairs or up the elevator. So now I got to go upstairs to get up there. Then I got to go through the gym to go down a hallway to get to the bathroom. And this is after I sign in and give them all my information too. and I had to explain to management, to even HR, and say, this is not a viable option for me. There needs to be something else in place, or we need to figure something else out. And, and this was as I was having continued conversations about my accommodations within the workplace. And, they put all the pressure on me, which is fine. And they said, well, you give us a solution. You tell us what you think is fair. And I told them, I said, okay, well then just let me go home and come back. If I'm going to have to go to the bathroom, let me go home and use my bathroom, because I live 5 minutes away. You guys know this. You have my address. I live 5 minutes down the street. Let me go home. I'll come back once I'm finished. They said, well, that's not a reasonable accommodation. Now, I'm just going to make a side note, because I'm going to say this again later. In the eyes of the law and in precedent, like setting cases, for any sort of ADA, anything to do with disabilities, the common thread here when using the terminology a reasonable accommodation is typically when it comes to something that is going to cost the business a extraneous amount of money, or be a major financial burden to them. So for example, if I had asked them and said, hey, build me my own private bathroom that I can use because I have a disability and I can't do that, that's an unreasonable accommodation. Asking them to go home and come back, in my opinion, and potentially in the eyes of, a judge, probably would not be an unreasonable accommodation to say, hey, let the dude go home. He lives 5 minutes away, whatever. But they ended up denying that for me, saying that my house is further away than across the street. Valid point. What I had to kind of explain to them is, I am not going to make it across the street.
Right. So
Therefore, I need to go home and probably change my pants, take a
that's what I was going to
shower.
ask. Like, I
Yeah.
don't mean to make it this way,
No,
but dude,
no.
I think
It's
it's
tough.
important for people to know sometimes, like, I work with people and I'm not like, they've told me that it's like that way, but I don't, it's hard for me to relate not having that. But so it would probably be what you're saying is like, so if you make this accommodation for me, I'm sorry to get like graphic about it, but I will wear a diaper to work. And if I happen to have to use it, what I'm asking you is to let me go home and change. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Exactly right. And that's kind of where we left it, is I just told them, I said, fine, if I crap all over the floors, I mean, that's what's going to happen. And I'm not going to clean it up. Like, that's on you guys to clean it up. Because I'm telling you up front that there is now a barrier from me being able to do my job
Right.
properly. I should have access to basic human services while on the job, and you are denying me being able to do that. Again, not, it's, totally out of their control. I get that, but I'm presenting a solution. You don't want to present me with any solutions. You're putting it all on me. I'm giving you a very viable solution. Really, the only other thing, short of the embarrassment of just wearing a freaking diaper, by the way, I swear a lot. I don't know if you're able to have
Hey,
swearing.
bro. Fuck yeah. Let's do it. You can
Okay,
do it.
yeah. Besides wearing a fucking diaper every day to work, like, thankfully, I never had a situation, but it's like, again, this goes back to the humanity aspect, in my opinion. Um, it's the way that you treat people, and it's the way, I wish that one of the managers would have just sat me down, had a conversation, and said, hey, look, I understand that this might be difficult for you because of A, B, and C reasons. How can we try to accommodate? How can we try to make this work? How can we try to make this so that it's not going to be something embarrassing for you? Because it's already an embarrassing thing to be checking out a customer even. And I've actually had this happen where I've been in the middle of a transaction, and boom, it hits me like that. And I've got to go run up to a manager, and it's not a, let's have a conversation about it. It's, hey, can you go finish that transaction?
Mm-hmm.
Or I think on TikTok there's about a new Bugatti. Like,
Yeah.
that's literally me. That's me flying by an AIC being like, I gotta go run to the bathroom.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, the customer's like, what just happened?
Right. Right.
I feel bad. What am I going to do? I can't sit there and explain it to the customer, explain it to the AIC, and now because, we only had the 2 bathrooms, they had to lock out the customers. So now I got to go find a key too. I got to make sure I have, my key card on me so I can get access to the back room, grab the key for the bathroom, then run to the bathroom and get in there and get situated. So, again, short of going across the street, even with the 2 bathrooms there, it was already a process. And sometimes a close call. So, that I think is where a lot of my animosity personally started building up, is not being taken seriously or kind of being brushed off. Um, looking back on it now, it is what it is. There's not much that I can really do about it, unfortunately. Um, I again encourage people, like, when you have situations like this, if you have accommodations on file, and if you, have it notated that you have a disability, um, and these companies, because companies, unfortunately, and this isn't exclusive to the cannabis industry, but companies in general, I think for way too long have just gotten away with treating people, especially people with disabilities, but really everyone in general, treating them the way that they want to, and making making people feel like they are stripped of any sort of power to, I hate to use the phrase fight back, but in this day and age, and truthfully with the climate, that everything's in, with inflation and people are upset and wages aren't increasing, and all this other stuff going on in the world, not to go on a whole side tangent here, but like, people are fed up. And so that's why I encourage people, especially people with disabilities, you have things like the EEOC, it's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. You have places like that where you can reach out, and you have uh, some federal big brother to kind of help you a little bit. Um, because I've tried to explain to some people at work too, who, I don't mean this in a talking down way, but like, some people just don't know that, like, companies have the same rights as humans, which is just crazy to me. Um, I I can kind of see why, but it also just, to me, feels like an overstep of power, in my opinion. Why, I understand them having free speech, things like that. But I won't get into all of that's for a different podcast. Um, but anyways, yeah. So just, again, kind of for my situation, it really came to a head back in December. Um, I had a Crohn's flare up, is what they're called. So I had a flare up that morning. I had sent an email into my management team and said, "Hey, I'm going to be running late." And this is another point of contention that they always had with me, or have continued to have with me, is they would get upset that I couldn't give them a 1 hour heads up. Um, which, again, after discussing everything that we've kind of built up to now, um, there was, I'll preface this by saying, from, again, I started January 2022. We're now in December of 2022. So that's almost an exact full year that I've had not only like my accommodations kind of set in place, but that they've understood what those accommodations were, how they affect me, and should have an understanding of kind of like how my disease works a little bit. If they don't, that's really up to them on if they want to take the initiative and do some research on their own. But December 2022 rolls around, and I'm having a situation where, just like many, many, many other times for many months before that, I called in and told them, "Hey, I'm sorry I can't give you this 1 hour heads up, but I'm supposed to be there in 10, 15 minutes, whatever. I'm going to be late. I'm having a Crohn's flare up." And it was pretty bad that day. So, I ended up not being able to come in due to the pain and everything for like 2 hours. I kind of had to, like, just lay down and let everything, mellow out before I was able to go in and feel like I could come in and actually do my job, and not just call off. Um, I come in that day and they switched me around a little bit with my position, not a big deal. Um, and then I get right before my shift is supposed to end. I was supposed to get off at like 3:30 that day. Like 20 minutes before, I get a manager coming up to me on my position and they're like, "Hey, um, not a big deal. You know, don't have to worry about anything. Just want to have a conversation with you before you go home for the day." Okay, sure. All right. My head again, I'm being told not a big deal, setting that expectation. And as a side note, I will say, especially being autistic, like that's a big thing. Like I don't like change, and I like to have those expectations set up front, because if you're setting an expectation that it's going to be one thing, or like even when I go out with friends and like we're going to go do this and it's going to be this type of night, that's the type of night that I'm planning for. And if it's going to go totally off the rails and we're getting drunk and going to 20 bars and all that, like I'm going to go home, because that's just not what I was expecting. That's not what I was planning for. So mentally. So I go into the office. Again, now at this point, it's like 10 minutes before I'm like clocking out for the day. Um, and I sit down. Actually, I wasn't even sitting down yet. Manager just flat out right away just goes, just want to let you know, we're gonna write you up for being late today. And I was like, what do you mean? I sent an email. No, no, I understand that you sent the email, but because it wasn't within the 1 hour, because you didn't give us a big enough heads up, that's why we gotta write you up. And I literally looked at her and I said, you know that you have my accommodations on file, right? Like, oh yeah, no, I talked to the GM about this before, we decided, and it was her and another manager who apparently had a conversation, some type of conversation about they wanted to write me up for this. Don't know why it needed to be between two managers. Don't know why it needed to, whatever. To be fair, these two managers are not my best friends. They are don't really like me the most. I don't know why, like, because I get along with everyone at work, or at least I try to. Um, and really the only thing that I've ever caused a stink about is making sure that I have these accommodations on file, because again, to me, it's very important. Um, so, and not only that, but I've also advocated to other people who really have come to me, and felt comfortable, coming to me and opening up. And that's something that I think really impacted me, being in a position at work there where a lot of coworkers have come up to me privately and said, "Hey, I don't know how to deal with the situation because I have such and such disability or disease, and I'm getting this type of response from management." And, you know, I've done so much research over the years with my own disability that I'm not an expert, but I definitely know probably more than the average Joe in terms of how to go about these situations, um, and what to do. And so I appreciate the people that feel comfortable enough to come to me and do that. But again, I'm sitting there, she's having this apparent conversation with another manager, about how they want to write me up. And, I kind of pushed back on it and was like, I don't understand why I'm being written up for this, because again, I have these accommodations on file. Um, and I haven't been written up. And I think that that's the important part is I have this precedent set where I have not been written up, uh, for many, many months. I've called in late many, many times, even called off, and that was the thing too, is I'm like, if I had just called off, I probably wouldn't be having this conversation. How am I going to be penalized for trying to still come in and even work half of my shift, trying to still put in some time, help out my team so we're not short staffed? I come in, yes, it's late, but at least I'm coming in, I'm able to put in some work and help people, and like, you know, somehow I'm being penalized for that. How does that make any sense? Um, and so, there was a two or three write-ups within the next couple of weeks for similar reasons. And, one thing that should be noted about Crohn's and really a lot of autoimmune diseases is that, even my doctor wrote down on the form that he had to fill out for the accommodations, he said stress is a major factor in exacerbating symptoms. And that's not just for me, that's for a lot of people. So putting two and two together, hello, you're putting me through all this stress of writing me up. I've never been written up in my life. Now I'm getting written up multiple times over the next couple of weeks, and I have all that paperwork saved with me. And that's kind of where another facet of this became an issue. So I was being told that
DJ, you still there? I think we may have lost you. Pause this first. Oh, sorry, we lost you for a moment. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I was you kind of cut off. If you don't mind restarting that thought.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, no, I was just saying really like, so I had asked to be given a like official form basically for
Right.
this write-up. Because again, as I will plead to everybody out there who has disabilities within the workplace, like document everything. They will not do it for you as they should. And so that was kind of my biggest issue is, I told them, I'm like, I need to have documentation that you are writing me up and that you are going against my accommodations. I think that's where they realized we messed up here. And that's where it started, where I really had to start getting like kind of legal on them and bringing down a little bit of a hammer, because I told them, I said, look, it's not only federal law, but I could pull up the exact code within the Illinois legislation saying that you have to give me a copy. Like if I were to go and request a copy of my employee personnel file, which I'm entitled to 2 of those within a calendar year, within a decent interval, you have to give me my employee personnel file. You have to. There's no way if buts are around it, or else you'll be sued by the state and they will get those records regardless. Don't worry, you'll get a fine and you'll be sued from them. So so I started telling them like, hey, I'm going to request my employee personnel file then, because that has to be included in there. If you're going to give me any sort of write-up or any sort of negative mark against me, that has to go in my employee file. You can't just like write me up and then not put it in my employee profile. So I ended up doing that. And I ended up having a sit down meeting with the GM. I actually ended up pulling in another coworker as well. And this is where it really got crazy. Like, I kid you not, this is like verbatim what was said. We sat down, we had this whole conversation. We went around in a circle about it. It was the GM and another manager, and then it was me and a coworker, because I didn't feel comfortable at this point going in, having these conversations without having a witness that I knew was going to be on my side of things. So we go around, we have this conversation. I mean, it's like an hour-long meeting at this point, talking about why I was even written up in the first place and why it's going against my accommodations. And eventually towards the end of the meeting, I say like, hey, like you guys have to give me a copy. Like you guys have to give me a piece of paper saying that I'm being written up. Like you can't deny me this, especially since it's already like I've already been written up once or twice at this point. Or it was a few times actually. At this point, the GM wanted to argue with me and say, well, on our scale, you only have enough points where it's considered a verbal warning. I'm like, okay, I understand that you are verbally giving me that warning, but it is still like you can't tell me that there is no documentation at all that I'm being written up, because at that point, then how do you even know how many points I would have? Like your logic is not making any sense.
Mhm.
You have to be writing this down somewhere, keeping track of how many times I'm being written up and how many points I have accrued at this point. And they say, oh, well, you only have 1.5 points. And at 2 points, it becomes a written warning. And I said, no, I understand that. I understand that I am a half point away because I've now at that point accrued 3 half-point occurrences, 3 different half-point write-ups. I was like, but as other people have been given in the past for their half-point or 1-point occurrences, whatever, there is a form and I've seen it circulating around for everybody else. Why are you denying this for me specifically? And I said it, and I said it too. I was like, I'm sure you are doing this because you know that you should have never written me up in the first place, because I have these accommodations on file in place to make sure that I, again, have these, leniencies when it comes to being off or being able to come in late, whatever. And now you realize that, you shouldn't have done that. You're kind of already in it and you're denying it. And I kid you not, when she said that, when the GM said that, the coworker and even the other manager who was in there, like verbally laughed. And the manager actually like held up his clipboard over his face like this, trying to hide the fact that even he knew what she was saying sounded so fucking ridiculous, to try to argue with me about the semantics of what type of write-up I'm receiving.
Yeah, this is
Not
like,
give me the documentation for it. Like,
yeah,
just
give me the
absolutely.
fucking paper.
Yeah, like just give me a paper. Just like, who cares? Like, you put your foot in your mouth at this point. It's already been said and done. Like, you shouldn't have done it. I told the manager on the spot that day when she was writing me up that she should call somebody. She said she already called the GM and got the okay from the GM that I should be written up. I'm like, so you in some type of way agreed with this decision. Um,
Yeah.
so give me the documentation that I'm asking for. So, um, as well as I also want to note, because I took notes from this meeting. Um, it's actually within our collective bargaining agreement with the union. I have the section written down, everything that if we're being written up, we're supposed to get documentation of it. So I'm like, not only is it just common practice and potentially legal grounds of something you should be doing, um, it's written within our contract with you. Like, you're supposed to be giving me some type of documentation. Um, and that all led up to, again, me saying, okay, I don't know what they are or are not keeping track of on me. Let's just put in the request. So I put in a request for my employee personnel file. I mean, I didn't have any of my performance reviews in there. I'd had like 3 at that point because we have them like one each quarter. So I had been there for, again, for a full year at that point. So I had none of my performance reviews. Now I have copies because I've always asked for copies of my performance reviews when I sit down and talk to the manager. And mind you, too, all my performance reviews really have just been like managers saying like, hey, we think you are doing, not them saying like you're perfect or anything, but like them basically saying like, I don't really see a lot that you can improve upon. Although I did have one manager in a meeting once tell me, um, because another accommodation I have is that the way that they initially had the line set up is it was like a snake. So, or I think it still kind of is set up like that, but it kind of snakes around the building, and you have all these accessories that people are kind of like going past, and then it lets out at one point, and so it's kind of like, you take the next person going through, um, and where it lets out is in front of one specific register. And I told them, I said, when I set up my accommodation, I said, I can't be at that register, because they kept trying to put me right at that register that's right in front of the giant crowd of people that are waiting to be called up next. I was like, it gives me anxiety. People are staring me down. I feel like I'm being rushed. I feel like I'm making mistakes. I can't do that. And so eventually I actually got it written into my accommodations to not have to be on that register and to be on a slower pace register, because again, it's too overwhelming for me. And so going back, to these performance reviews, I had a manager once actually tell me, she was like, one thing that you can work on is not having so much anxiety working behind the register. Like, yeah, let me just get right on that. Let me just carve the part of the autism out of my brain and just not have anxiety that's comorbid with autism. Like, cool. Thanks for
That's
the
insane.
advice.
Yeah.
I'll work on
So
that.
it's like I've been working on that, but thank you.
Yeah, like it's not, it's just hard to work on that, but sure.
Right, right.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I have like a list of things that were not included in my employee personnel file. They didn't have all my write-ups in there. So I ended up having to cause a stink about that. Then eventually they got it fixed. Okay,
Which
fine.
is
That's
interesting because like very rarely are you like, hey, I've been written up. Where is, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And eventually I really had to take it up with the union. Um, and after about a month, because it was literally December 1st when I had been written up initially, going against my accommodations. And so then on January 6th, I ended up finally having a sit down meeting between me, one HR representative from corporate, and two of the union people. One was, I think, I don't know if it was like a district manager or like a lawyer, representation from the union. And then one was just our normal representative. Um, so we all sat down in a private room and we talked about my accommodations. We talked about this whole situation. And I think the whole point of it was really just to kind of like get the accommodations removed. At that point, that was my biggest thing, was saying, hey, I know you guys made a mistake. I think you guys know you made a mistake. Let's just get this on the same page and get it removed and purged off my personnel file. Um, and I'll make a quick side note too. I had been told from other managers that I had already had a couple of points. It wasn't until this whole situation that I found out I had 0 points, which was great, except for now the points that I was accruing. Um, so and again, this miscommunication between management, it's like, how can there be so much miscommunication where I'm being given a bunch of anxiety and stress, things that are not good for my disease, because I'm being told from one manager, hey, you have all these points that we've been keeping track and tallying behind the scenes on you. And then now I'm being told, no, you actually don't have any points. Okay, whatever.
yeah. Can I
So
ask
anyway,
really
so
quick for
yeah.
clarification? And I apologize. I hope this doesn't send us on a tangent, but I just wanted to clarify. You said you were wanting to remove what from your employee file?
Oh, the points. The
Oh, the points. I thought you were saying, I think I may have misheard you, or maybe you misspoke. I swear you said that you wanted the accommodations removed from your employee file. I was like, why would you
oh
want your accommodations removed?
oh yeah, no, I definitely
I
don't want
think you
those.
misspoke. I think you misspoke, or maybe
Which
I just misheard you. So,
which I will, I actually, great point that you make there though, and I just want to kind of backtrack on this for a second. Yes, it is fantastic to have written accommodations because it's easier to prove. I'll just say
okay.
that up front.
Yeah.
But in the eyes of the law, a spoken accommodation, if I am talking to you and you're my manager and you say, yes, I will agree to you being able to come in late, whatever, and we have that agreement and it's spoken, it's verbal. In the eyes of the law, that is just as valid, having a verbal accommodation, even though it is not written. Obviously, it is,
Much harder to
um,
prove.
yeah,
Because
exactly,
I could
harder to
just
prove.
say,
It's
no,
it's
we didn't agree on
recommended
that.
to have the written,
Yeah. Yeah. Because I could
accommodation
just say,
because,
no, we didn't agree on that. And then you have to try to
right.
prove that we did. And then there's the whole, yeah. So,
Which I mean, and in those situations, like in this situation, could be provable because even if I didn't have it written down, they would be able to see, well, why has he not gotten all these
true.
points accrued, for showing up late, while other people are being given points for showing up late. In which case, I could say, well, that's because we had a verbal agreement.
Right. Right.
No. So again, there are ways to prove it. And that's why I want to make that distinction, because there might be some people who are listening to this who have a disability. Maybe they haven't, gone down this route, or maybe they've only done a verbal accommodation with their employer. And, you know, I make that case to say, hey, you should really document everything. But it is, if you feel like, oh, I've only ever had a verbal one and they've gone against it, but I don't think I can prove it, you might not necessarily be out of luck, because it is just as valid. And you might have just as valid of a case. Um, but yeah, so then January 6th rolls around, you know, I'm having this conversation with two union reps, myself and an HR rep. And of course, you know, HR, they want to try to argue about semantics and itty bitty pieces of information here, there, whatever. Um, the most important part that I got out of that whole thing is they had been denying myself and other people a very specific accommodation. Kind of going back here, I told you that I had gotten approved an accommodation to not be on that one register that's right in front of where all the people get let out. For obviously a plethora of reasons. And originally, what I was trying to get approved and was eventually denied was just not having to be on register in general. You know, and even my psychologist that I went to, who, you know, when I was diagnosed with autism and like did all the tests and everything, like they even wrote it in and said like, hey, like social interaction is very stressful. It's very hard for him. Um, don't try to force it. And if it's possible, please don't put him on a register. Have him do work in the back, let him wear headphones, like, you know, just kind of zone out. And that's where I do my best work, really. Um, and that's a whole other thing. They denied all of my autism accommodations. All of them. I asked to wear headphones while I work, like noise canceling headphones, because I mean we've got loud sounds, you know, we've got those plastic bins where they put the orders into, and then they're, you know, thudding against the counters, the cashiers, and you know, people are all talking, and you know, there's 420, and you know, it's just all sorts of sounds that are going on in a day there. It's very overwhelming. And so their solution was, well, let's just put them in a corner. So my register that I'm assigned to is literally, if you ever come visit while I'm working, you will see me if I'm ever on register. It is in a literal corner of the store, um, away from everyone else. That was their solution, instead of saying, sure, let's just have him do the 7 or 8 other jobs that he could be doing. He could be checking people in at Fishbowl. He could be concierge and greeting people at the front door. He could be doing orders with people off to the side, because again, for me, it's, you know, doing it off to the side to me is a little less stressful, because I get to take my time with people. I get to sit there and info dump, you know, the thing that I actually enjoy doing. When I'm at a register, it's very go, 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 go.
Where's
Yeah,
yours
so
at?
actually right there, right back there. And it's
Oh,
kind of dark back there too.
that one?
No, 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 go back.
You
Turn
mean,
back around.
oh, you mean over here? That corner, the orange corner by the bathrooms,
Kind of. Yeah.
like right here.
Yeah. No, no, if you spin it around,
Oh,
that's
spinner.
actually just where we keep like our walkie-talkies and stuff. Yeah,
Sorry.
so back there against that orange and gray wall.
The orange and gray. So this one? No, that's not an orange and gray wall.
Yep, right there where your mouse is. That's my
Gotcha.
register.
So there's like the right over here.
No, I mean, I'm saying like that is, yeah, that is my register, is in that corner there. Um,
Oh, gotcha.
you
So
flip it around.
I'm high. So thank you. You were over here. You're in this
No, you're
corner.
good. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is your corner.
Oh no, 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 no. You had it. You had it. You had it.
Okay, I'm confusing
Yeah.
myself. Anyways, you work
No,
at
no,
that
you're good.
dispensary
But
somewhere.
I'm back in that little corner over there. You know, I'm still behind the wall, or behind like the desk area or whatever. But it's that furthest. You know, I'm up against like the wall. So, you know, I've got the wall on my left hand side. I'm looking out at the whole sales floor. Um, but it's kind of dark over there and whatever. You know, whatever.
I'm
Um,
gonna try this one more time.
but
Is it
yeah.
this corner?
So go to the right a little bit.
To the right?
Yeah, go to the right.
anyways.
right there.
Okay.
So yeah, so you see kind of against the wall there, and you got
Mm-hmm.
the camera right above my head there.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, I'm still behind the desk, and all that. Yep. So if you go to
Okay.
the left there, yep. That register that's right there all the way to the end there up against the wall. That's the one that I got put on.
Nice.
Um,
So when you got
and
to go
that
to the
was again,
bathroom, you got to run all the way around, right?
so you see how it's kind of contradicting. Exactly. So I either have to go through our yeah, exactly, always be
Why don't you
watching.
just hop
Oh,
the registers? I'm joking. I'm joking.
yeah, well, yeah. Physically, I don't know if I could.
Right.
I'm not the most athletic.
I'm
That's why I
trying
work at
to, the joke
campus.
was like their crude suggestions, like, well, we'll just go across the street, the busiest fucking street, one of the busiest streets in Chicago, to the UFC gym. Like, so,
I mean, why don't they just supply me a fucking Sunnyside diaper at this point? Like,
right.
brand it at least,
Or put a bucket behind the desk.
Yeah, give me a shit bucket. I don't fucking care. Like, fuck. Um, but yeah, so again, so that was kind of the compromise that I ended up having to give way on
Mhm.
um is having this accommodation in place that I wasn't fully in favor of. Um, but I say all of this really to kind of go back to a really important point here is that when I had this conversation on January 6th with an HR rep, um, so I have it documented as well where they had a girl there who had a head injury, really bad head injury. And so she couldn't, be on a register. She had a verbal accommodation with a manager. We ended up actually really getting along at work because she didn't have, as much of the knowledge that I had about the ins and outs of what you should or shouldn't do, best practices with disabilities, such and such. And so she eventually actually came to me and was like, hey, like, should I be getting this on file? And I'm like, yeah, you should. But before any of that could really happen, she had, and I have all the break sheets showing she was never scheduled to be on a register because it was approved for her between her and the GM to not be on a register due to her disability. Um, because, in her words, like looking at a register and looking at the computer screen for too long, because they put us on there for like hours and hours at a time where you're just staring at the screen and doing, and you got to be very careful because obviously cannabis is a very regulated industry. You got to make sure you're not making mistakes, not over dispensing to somebody, whatever. Um, giving the right product and matching the right SKUs, all the little minuities that people don't see on the backside of it, that we're checking. And we do it quickly, but there's a lot that goes on. And so for her, it really kind of like it hurt in her own words, it hurt to be on a register for that many hours. So she had that verbal accommodation set up. I have all the documentation that I need to show that she was never placed on a register until the day that I asked for it and was denied to have that same accommodation and asked. And I said, okay, well, I would like to have it documented that you are denying me this accommodation because I think it's a very kind of coming full circle here, reasonable accommodation. It's not costing you, the company, any money. So I think that is a reasonable accommodation to not have to force me to be on a register, as part of my duties, because there are, as I was saying, several other duties I could be doing. I could be taking in delivery truck orders, which are almost on a daily basis. I could be doing accessories out on the floor. I could be taking orders with people. I could be concierge, greeting people. I could be checking people in at Fishbowl. I could be restocking stuff in the vault. I could be fulfilling orders in the vault. I mean, there's so much stuff that needs to get done around there that I could be doing with headphones on and not have to be on a register dealing with a fast-paced, stressful environment. I got that denied. On January 6th comes around and I'm having this meeting. I actually had the HR rep confirm and admit this in front of not just myself but two union member reps as well. in her own words, they are willing to accommodate that for people, but only on a short-term basis. And I want to let that sink in for a second. So if somebody, let's say I have an eye injury or something, and it really hurts, and my doctor says, hey, you can't stare at a screen for hours like that. At that point, that is classified as a short-term disability. Disability nonetheless, but a short-term disability. So for a short term of time, that person would not be able to be on a register, and they are okay with approving that. I have just as valid of a reason to not be on a register, but because I had no choice in the matter that I have to live with this disability for the rest of my life, I get denied it and have to struggle. So it's not so, and I think that that's an important thing to make a distinction on, because they are basically telling me and other people, we are okay with providing this on a short-term basis. It is not required of you to have to do this part of the job, but only for a short period of time. If it's a permanent thing, we're not willing to do that. If you, I mean, I'll open this up to you. If you could try to explain that to me or give me a valid reason, I've tried to justify it and put myself in corporate shoes and say, what could possibly be the valid justification for that? And I just can't think of anything personally, but I mean,
the thing that just has blown me away with like what I've heard from you and your coworkers is just they seem to have given up on the toilet in the building itself. I think I lost you here. Are you still there? Oh, you're still there. Cool.
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I just think like I know that there's a lot of different things going on, but it's just remarkable to me that the facilities, man, my signal must just be going in and out. You keep freezing on me. I think we're all good, but I just think it's remarkable. They're just like throwing in the white towel in the facilities. They're not able to provide modern amenities. And so they're just like, they just can't come up with anything. It's like, what year do we live in?
Yeah, you would think it's not 2023. And
And
to
I'm
be
not a
fair,
plumber. I don't know if there's like something like way nuanced going on at like a fucking deep seated issue at Sunnyside Wrigleyville with the toilet. I don't know.
yeah, I
It's like throw a fucking porta potty out front or something. I don't know.
we have a whole garage area. We have a whole basement that's being renovated. I don't know if it's been finished at this point. I mean, it's been like a year that they've been renovating this basement that used to be like a fridge area for, because again, it used to be a bar, right? So downstairs, we've got a downstairs area as well as an upstairs area.
Hmm.
And underneath, I mean, it's just like a huge, kind of looks like, if you have heard of the back rooms.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like that. It's very spooky, kind of creepy down there, but kind of gives very like backrooms vibes. But they actually store like all of our extra stock of like accessories and things like that down there. So, there are people that have the ability to go down there, but it's like, again, throw a porta potty down there,
Right.
or put it in the garage area where there's plenty of room. We can move stuff around, shuffle it around, so we have two porta potties back there. It might stink a little bit, but make sure you have people. I mean, again, that I shouldn't have to be providing all the solutions here. This should be on.
Right. That's
Make sure you
that's
got
my
a
thing.
Yeah, make sure you got a person coming once a week, or maybe if it's really stinky, twice a week. Come empty that porta potty. You've got a garage door in the back that opens wide up, so not only could you easily get it in and out of there if it's a temporary solution, but you could easily have somebody come and dump it and clean it out, once
Yeah.
or twice.
So like when I try to put myself in the shoes of management, I do think we should acknowledge that it probably is difficult to work with a lot of different people that have like a lot of different disabilities. I'm not okay, look, I'm
Yeah,
just saying.
sure.
Now, they still have to make those accommodations and treat you guys like the humans that you are. So I just wanted to acknowledge though that yeah, it probably is challenging. Like I'm trying to put myself in their shoes and think like I saw there's so many registers in that store. There's got to be like 30 fucking employees or something. And you're what? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. You work
No, no, yeah,
there.
you're spot. That was actually spot on. I mean, we have about, I think, 30 to 35 people every day currently working, and that's only because that's what we're capped at per OSHA standards because we only have the 2 bathrooms functional.
Mm, mm,
When we had the 4 bathrooms, and like that's what I was saying when I first started, I mean, we had upwards of closer to probably 45 to 60 employees almost every day. And I
yeah.
know again that this was talked about in previous episodes with other coworkers I have, but like we also at that point had 8 or 9 AICs on staff. We had 5 or 6 security guards every single day. And to your point, I would agree with you. I
I
would
want
agree
to
with you.
be clear. I'm not trying to, that is a horrible
No,
excuse.
no,
Like
no, no,
that,
no, no,
because
no.
people could mistake what I was saying,
I'm
you
not,
know?
of
I,
course, no.
I'm glad you didn't take it the wrong way.
I don't get that vibe at all. But going along with your point, because I think it is important to try to put yourself in
Yeah.
management or corporate shoes and say, okay, well, maybe why are we making some of these decisions? And sure, if somebody wanted to make that argument to me and say, well, it's really difficult because we've got 60 plus employees in the building, whether it's at a time or not, doesn't matter. We have that many for that location. And let's just say even half of them have disabilities. Because I mean, from the amount of people that have come and talked to me, I would potentially even say like that's a pretty good estimate. Like I would say probably around half the people working there have some type of disability. Um, and they're all varying, obviously mine is I have a mental and a physical, specifically with my gastrointestinal, but I have, other people have like fibromyalgia. I mean, that's hard, in those types of situations. Okay, it's really hard to accommodate all these people. But to be fair, I would also say 2 things. One, that is what they are um hiring people for. Going back to my interview process, and there's a reason I kind of, you know, went in order of kind of order operations here for my story, because it all goes back to my interview process. They are hiring people full well knowing that they have these disabilities. They want that. They want people to be able, and this is what I was told on why I was hired, because they want me to be able to uh connect with the customers, because we have a large medical clientele as well that come in and they rely on us for medical services, or medical cannabis. Um, and so I think that you actually strike a very important point here in this whole discussion, is that they are hiring people specifically who do have disabilities. So it's kind of hard to say like, hey, we are going to
Good
hire
point.
a good amount of people that have disabilities because we want them to connect with the customer base that we're bringing in, and then to not treat those same people. Because I was a customer of Sunnyside before I was an employee there. I remember Sunnyside when it was down the road over by Uncommon Ground. And I had the one of the first experiences when it became legal. It was first just at that location. Then they bought Aurelio's when that went out of business. They bought that across the street. Then I was still a customer when I had to go across the street and then cross back over, and people hated that process. And then they bought John Barleycorn, and then they made it into just that one building, and that's where it's at now. I've been a part of it as a customer. I've been on both sides of it now, so I've had this experience with Sunnyside since like basically day one.
Yeah.
uh,
And you bring up a really important point that I completely like neglected. Like I am, most of the bud tenders at the dispensary I originally went to were also, so I was a medical cannabis patient as well, and they were medical cannabis patients. Like they mainly hired medical cannabis patients because they wanted people to be able to speak authoritatively on the product. You don't like just hire somebody that's just like especially back then during the medical cannabis days, like you wanted medical patients to be employed,
yeah.
so it kind of proves, it kind of adds to your point. And I even forget that, which makes this entire thing a little bit even more crass. I realize it's no longer that anymore. It's no longer just medical, but when you think about the foundation of
that it was
their
built on.
employment, yeah, their employment was built on employing medical cannabis patients.
And
And
again,
I don't know the numbers, but at least from my anecdotal experience, that was the case, So,
and again, this all goes back to the buzzword that I've used many times, but it's also the expectation that is being set from day one that we want you to be relatable. We want this to be a experience where you have experience, obviously, with cannabis, but you can also share that experience with people in a wide array of people that have no experience and people that have been doing it for many, many years, potentially way longer than myself, even, and I love having those conversations too, like just go on a side thing here for a quick second. When we started getting Acapulco Gold in, it was so great having older clients come in, people that were smoking Acapulco Gold back. I mean, that's a strain that was super popular back in like what, the 70s or 80s, something like that. And uh I had people that used to get it, and smoke it, and they're much older now, and they were uh giving me history lessons on what it was like to smoke it back then. And those are the types of conversations that I absolutely, again, I'll say again, I absolutely love those conversations with people. So again, it just kind of goes back to the expectation that is being set. Um, and jumping back to this whole meeting again, January 6th
yes,
rolls around. I have this conversation, you know, I'm having them admit to me that we're okay with approving this accommodation, but only for short-term individuals, only for short-term
right.
disabilities. Which isn't necessarily the case, because even with somebody who had it long-term, they verbally agreed upon that. But when I asked for it and was denied, and at this point, again, there was already that friction built from the whole bathroom situation. I think there is a lot of ego that gets kind of put into management's arms sometimes, especially some of the management that might not necessarily be there anymore. But when I was, for the majority of the time that I've been working there, that those managers I've been there is a lot of ego there. They get hurt easily. A perfect example, I bring up the whole headphone thing for autism, and being able to wear noise canceling headphones, very important for me. I wear them a lot of places that I go, just kind of be in my own world while I'm walking. I take public transportation. I take the red line to get to work every day, or drive if I have to, but most of the time, I mean, I'm 5 minute ride on the red line. Um, and I remember we actually had a pre-roll, a morning meeting, where a manager said, I want you guys to be wearing headphones while you guys are counting inventory in the morning. He encouraged this. And his reason, and this is going to blow your mind, his reason is because he said, I think you guys do better work when you're not talking with other people in the mornings. And when you kind of are just zoned out, you have your headphones in and you can just focus on the task, because sometimes, we have a lot of inventory we got to count. Counts can get off if you're chatting with your buddy next to you, whatever. And I get that. So for the same reasons that they want us to wear headphones in the morning when we're doing our morning startup duties before we open, is the same reason that they're denying that accommodation for me, being autistic, and saying it's not a good enough reason to have that on, because, and I'm like, but don't you want me to do a good job? Don't you want me to, whatever. I mean, at this point, I've pleaded that case so many times.
Hmm.
Um, so I thought that was super interesting. Um, I think another thing, kind of going into this whole medical situation, or actually, I'm going to pause on the medical situation. I think going back to the whole denial, and this is kind of going to wrap up my portion with denying accommodations. Not necessarily potentially accommodation, but I think it sets a dangerous precedent when you have employees that don't feel comfortable And I don't know if Allison talked about this at all, but employees who don't feel comfortable working in a certain position, it's hard to watch them force people to still do that. For example, I've had multiple women that work there who have been sexually harassed from customers. Actually, a few from an employee as well, but I think that was handled. I'm not sure, but I know for sure it happens on a pretty regular basis with the customers when they're taking orders. I can tell you I've been sexually harassed, and I know that is a more rare thing, especially being a man. And potentially, I think that a lot of men just don't speak out about it. I've had, again, you have these games where you have individuals coming in very drunk. I have a partner, I have a girlfriend I've been with for over 5 years. I don't, like I don't need girls coming in super drunk. I had a shift once where I was working concierge, so I'm like the forward greeter when people are done being checked in. And we had this group of girls that came in just absolutely like slosh, like they're just drunk, falling over, like, whatever. Apparently one of the girls thought I was cute or something, and uh they go over, they do, they're trying to start a conversation with me.
Crazy that they're even allowed in, by the way. Just have to say.
I mean, we've had people literally like pass out on the floor, piss all over our floors, like throw up on our floors. Like, I mean, it is a problem. Like, that's just, I'll just leave it there. It is a problem. Also, talking about security, I know that was mentioned yesterday, having the lowered amount of security. I mean, we have that exit door, which is a double exit system. So you have two doors you have to go through exit. I mean, we have people that are so drunk, the line goes past that door. People will try to sneak in, and successfully it happens quite a few times. People will sneak in through that door, and then we're like, hey, what do you do? Because you could see it. And that's why we have somebody positioned at that concierge position at the front. Help answer questions, keep an eye on some things, whatever, help people if you can. And so I was there doing that one night. It's a night game, just got out, bunch of people drunk, group of girls come in, we're packed. I mean, the whole line inside is just absolutely packed. And they go off to the side. I point them in the right direction to go place their order. They come back, they get in the line behind me. They get halfway through the line, and one of the girls, who I think just thought I was attractive or whatever, which I'll take as a compliment. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh my God, like I hate that. I guess it's endearing, but where it becomes annoying is like, she's coming up, I'm trying to do my duties. She's standing right in front of me. Like, when I tell you no personal space, she is right in front of me. She's, like slurring all her words in front of me, trying to strike up a conversation. And I'm trying to be nice. I give her the whole, oh yeah, well, trying to answer her questions, because she's trying to strike up a conversation by asking me some questions about cannabis. Hey, that's great. I'll talk to whoever about cannabis, because I think that's great conversations to be had. But I think I was trying to also be very curt, very matter of fact. I gave you your answer. Okay. And she just kept trying to like come up with the most random questions to ask me. And eventually I hear somebody shout from way back in the line behind me. I don't even know. She shouted her name, and she goes, he's not interested. Just take the hint. Just come back. And she goes, and I could see her face get totally red. And she's like, okay, well, I'm going to go find my friends now. And then she like runs back to her friends. Super awkward at that point. I feel bad, because I'm like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to handle those types of situations? This is the typical Starbucks barista situation. Just because I'm being nice to somebody at work doesn't mean that I'm interested in them. Doesn't mean that, it means that you should sit there and try to strike up a conversation. I understand that you're drunk and maybe you don't understand that you're sitting there for a little longer than usual, but at that point, it's kind of borderline, like you're really in my space. And there's been multiple times where I've been, in a position off to the side where I'm placing orders with people. There's no barrier. you're standing there. I mean, you showed it earlier when you were kind of moving around within the dispensary. I mean, you're standing there and people come in with big groups of friends, family, whatever. And especially on game nights when it's or game days when people are drunk and they're coming in, they're breathing all over you in your personal space. I'm somebody where, again, a major part of being autistic, I don't like being touched. And sometimes even between me and my girlfriend, like even sometimes she'll touch me and I'm like, oh, like I like jump or something. She's probably the only person I really enjoy touching, like have like, sorry, I didn't mean that, touching me,
Yeah, I get it.
to the point where like, I'll give her hugs and feel comfortable about it. Even my own
Right.
mom, I don't feel comfortable sometimes giving hugs. It's not because I hate my mom. It's just it makes my skin crawl up. And yet I'll be subjected to being in a position where they apparently can't come up with a better way to make it flow or have a barrier between you and the customers. And it comes with the territory of where that store is located, where it's natural. You're gonna have the drunk people. I have no problem with that. I actually like being drunk and being high at the same time. I like having that crossfade and there are some studies actually to show that being drunk actually increases the high.
Yeah,
Um,
it's pretty fucking fun. You got to be
oh
careful,
yeah, it's
folks.
great.
But
But what I don't enjoy is having drunk people touch me, push me around. I'm given this little iPad to hold and place your order. They're grabbing the iPad. I swear to God, I actually had to tell a coworker of mine who was helping take an order. They turned away like this for a second, and I watched a guy go like this and then go back to scrolling. And I called over the radio. I was like, hey, so and so, can you come here for a second? And they were like, okay. They come over and they leave the interaction. I said, hey, don't touch that iPad again. I was like, go let them finish the order, go clean it. And they're like, oh, okay. And I told them why, and they were like freaked out. But again, and that's kind of like part of the reason too, is it's like, it's a cleanliness, a safety thing. Um, and so, you've had multiple women at this location who have voiced these concerns and said, hey, can we try to get a new system in place? No, this is what works best. We're not looking to change anything at this time. Okay. Um, so so the solution is continue to let women be groped or be verbally harassed from customers. Hey, because I've seen it happen too. These guys come in, they're drunk or even just sober dudes. They start hitting on some of the women that work there. And it's uncomfortable to watch. And I can't even imagine being, some of these women in the position to know that you have to be subjected to sexual harassment whenever you're put in that position. And when you bring up those concerns to your management, again, this goes back to it's how you handle the situation. They're not being treated like they're humans because they're not being subjected to it. You don't see the managers typically over there doing that because technically they can't. It's written into our contract with our union. These are our duties. They don't want to take away hours from us. So they can't. But again, they're not subjected to it. So that, the management overall narrative is always, oh, you guys are just whining. You just don't want to do that position. And it's like, there's this reoccurring theme where it's like, no, some of these positions or processes are just dangerous or are just not set up in viable ways.
yeah, and I get the vibe they're going for. It's like kind of like a AT&T Apple Store vibe where you come in, like think about it. When you go to the Apple Store, you got somebody with an iPad. They come over, you sit real close together. Like I sit at the same table as the person. Sometimes they walk around and look at the phones with you. And it's a very intimate process, but what is not happening is you're not like loaded, you're not you know what I mean. Usually when you go to one of those stores, this is right off of Clark Street, right next to Wrigleyville, right next to all the bars. And like you're saying, like, so I'm not bringing that up to put down any of your complaints. I'm trying to say I understand the vibe they're going for, but maybe
Yeah.
that vibe doesn't work in the place that you're at. Does that make sense?
So, and I 100% agree. And this is going to bring me my next point, my next quick little story I've got. I had a conversation with a very high up corporate person. She was like the regional, so she's not the district, she's a regional manager. It was, oh, actually the district manager was there as well. We had a sit down meeting and we talked about this in February. And this is where it really got concerning for me. And where I really got the impression that corporate just couldn't give a rat's ass about how we're treated, any of our ideas. I brought up the idea to them and said, hey, instead of setting it up like this, what would be, because when I don't know if you've shopped at that location, our location, when you get checked in at the front, whether you have a pickup order or whether you are coming to place one, you're given a ticket regardless. The only difference is that if you already pre-placed your ticket, it's a receipt showing all the stuff you ordered, and it still has your order number at the top. If you are a fresh customer and you haven't placed anything, you want to look around or talk with somebody, build your own basket with someone, whatever, kind of like the more Apple side experience.
Yeah.
You're still given a little ticket with a QR code on it that we can scan so that we can pull up your basket, which will be empty, and it'll have a order number attached to that basket. So again, so we can keep track of, your order, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And it has your name and, all the information that we need. I proposed to them and said, hey, I think this would be a much safer and easier environment for not just customers, but for employees as well. What would be the harm in you wouldn't have to change much because you already have the ticket system set up, but just put little like screens or little TVs or whatever, little readers on the top of every register station. And when the order is finalized, so like if I fulfill an order, I give it to a runner, they go bring it to a person who's available to start ringing somebody up. Now they've got that ticket. They punch in the order number, boom, it pops up above them. Or they could call out or something if they want to do a PA system and say, hey, order number, blah, 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 come to register such and such. Perfect. And now they've got the light on, or they've got your order number above, their head, and you just go there, you check out, and boom. And you still have time at that point to have customers look around at the accessories, look around at some of the products in the display cases, have conversations with wellness advisors on the floor that are kind of moving around like Apple employees, because I agree with you. I think that that's the vibe that they're going for. Or if they want to place an order, again, we've got, at that point, you can have more wellness advisors just out on the floor, just having casual, great conversations with people, and just chatting it up, building those more personable connections with people, and make it a much more chill environment where people want to come back and be like, hey, I really enjoyed talking to so-and-so over there. We weren't talking anything about cannabis. I saw he had a cool shirt on or a cool pin on his lanyard. And we were just talking about that while I was waiting for my order to be ready. Boom, done. Or, hey, I saw this cool accessory and I was talking to so-and-so about how to use it because I've never dabbed before in my life. And I've been looking at the Puffco Peak and, whatever. You can't have those types of conversations because you only have the people off to the side who are taking orders, and it's typically a line waiting, so they got to burn and turn. Or you've got the people who are you got everyone in this line waiting to check out, and then when they get to the register, it's burn and turn again. So where are you having these conversations where you can actually just, like, again, the expectation when you're coming into the cannabis into this store is, the expectation is, hey, we want you to come and build these cool relationships. We want to be new. We want to be different. We want to have a different cannabis experience. And it's like, but you're not. This is just Jewel Osco without the self-checkout,
And it's only a matter of time before we do that. Because, like, really, what are you there
100%.
for? I mean, like, if we can get you compliantly scanned in and we can get your cash, like, pick out whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly. And in my opinion, this is just my opinion, of course, I think that's wrong. I don't think that that's the way you should go about it. It might work for McDonald's to have the kiosk there and be able to put in your order or whatever, and then just go pick it up when it's ready. But for cannabis, I think that's so wrong. Not
I
only
agree.
is it, there's so much nuance to it. I mean, I'm no expert. I,
Right.
I think, a lot of knowledge, but I'm definitely no expert. I'm no connoisseur, that's for sure either. But I do like to have those conversations. And as I've said before, I like having the conversations with people that have no experience and I can put them on something to start with. And I like learning from, older people that come in and have had, been smoking for the past 50 years.
Yeah, but this company, it's just the wrong place for that type of attitude, or for that those types of ideals. And I know that might be hard to hear. It's hard to say, like these companies brand themselves as CPG companies, consumer packaged goods. And if you just think about how you purchase most consumer packaged goods, like even they like to use them, they want to be the Coca-Cola of cannabis. They say that.
Right.
And you think
Right.
about that, like you don't really have a lot of conversations about Coca-Cola. I mean, I asked people about the new Coca-Cola Dream World, and they like, I didn't try it. And I was like, okay, I might try it. And it sucked. Fuck that shit. But I
Yeah.
guess what I'm saying is, you just come in, you grab a Coca-Cola because you know what you're expecting, you know what the experience is going to be like,
Mhm.
and I'm grabbing a Coca-Cola. So they want that to be the experience with weed. But as you say, it's much more nuanced than that. Each batch is different.
Mhm.
Each batch affects a person
Exactly.
differently.
That's a fantastic point. You could have the same strain,
Different batch. Yeah.
different,
Yep.
even two different growers,
Bingo.
and
Yeah.
night and day difference.
Well, hey, it's easy to get off on these tangents, and I'm not trying to stifle them. I just feel like you came on and we were talking about your case, and we had gotten to January 6th, and I wanted to make sure we saw through, uh,
No,
you
of
know,
course.
kind of what you were bringing up.
Um,
Um,
so I mean, the January 6th, I mean, that was kind of the extent of it.
you didn't storm the Capitol that day.
No, oh, you know what? That's a crazy coincidence. I didn't even realize that because I
Yeah,
have it written down the
I've been
exact
holding
date.
that back the entire time.
That is so crazy. I actually didn't even put two and two together.
Well,
Oh,
you've
well,
got an
that's
alibi.
2022. So,
Oh, darn.
so it was the year before that.
Year before that. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I was gonna
yeah.
say you have an alibi if anybody tries to say you're at the Capitol. Like, no, I was in
I was
HR.
fighting for my disability.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
no,
where
yeah.
do
So,
we how do we get to where we are today? Because I get the under impression
well,
that things are pretty serious now.
yeah, I mean, so, the way that that meeting January 6th kind of left off is, um, my union fought hard. They did eventually get them to drop the, kind of admit fault, not in an official capacity, which I did ask for. Because they said, like, is there anything you're looking for out of this? And I said, yeah, I'd like them to admit that they were wrong. I'd like them to admit that, they were like, well, I think them dropping the points and the write-ups off of your profile, I think that that's the best you're going to get. So, okay, fine. Um, I've had other times where I have, you know, come to the union for stuff where I thought it was, putting my safety at risk. They disagreed with me. Um, and that kind of was a staunch point, in my opinion. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way with my union because as much as they've been kind of hot and cold with how useful they are, that was kind of the last straw for me. I had a whole conversation with them over the phone trying to plead my case to say, hey, I don't think that this write-up was correct. Because really the write-up was over the fact that the manager, I came in late again, due to my disability, gave them ample heads up. So that wasn't an issue at that point. The issue is that when I came in, it was like an hour and a half late. I was supposed to be on a register and I was only scheduled for a couple hours in the beginning of my shift on register. So at that point, if I had jumped in, I would have only been on register for like another hour and a half. And then the rest of my shift for the other 5 hours, I would have been on whatever other position. They didn't like that. They wanted to make sure I was logging the majority of my shift on a register, even though, again, we've talked about how multiple doctors of mine have said he shouldn't even be on a register in the first place. They've denied that. They've the compromise we've come to is putting me in a little dark corner of the store instead, and saying that that's sufficient. And so I came in that day and I said, hey, I'm going to just finish up my shift on this register. And they said, no, we're going to put you on the register for the second half of your shift. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? Why would that make any sense? And they're like, well, you know what? Then I was called insubordinate. God, I wish that word could be completely nixed out of all employment, places of employment. I mean, that is a military. I hope people, when they hear that at work, that they recognize that was never a term that's been used within the workplace until the past like 20, 30 years. That was initially a term that has always been derived from military standpoint. It's a military word to be insubordinate to your superiors. And so even though it has that similar connotation to it, that I think is how it's kind of creeped into the workplace. But it's just so wrong, because I think insubordination, within the workplace, again, in my opinion, I was telling them and pleading this case to my union and saying, I don't believe that they have grounds to say that I was being insubordinate, because again, me coming in late, already telling them that I was having a flare up in the morning, I'm coming in late. Obviously, I'm not feeling well that day because of my disability, and you want to put me on the one position that I've already fought with you tooth and nail to not be on in general. And the compromise was to be on it as little as possible and in the corner, not on a fast paced version of that. But you're going to make sure that I'm on it for a majority of my shift on a day that I already am not feeling well and coming in late because of that. But I'm being called insubordinate. Like, it's just absolutely nuts. And like you've said multiple times too, we've got 30 plus employees on any given day. You're really going to tell me that it's too hard to grab somebody who doesn't have a disability or doesn't have the same type of disability that's affected like mine, and just say, hey, DJ's not feeling super well today. He had to come and work late because of such and such. They can't disclose my reasons, legally, but just say like, hey, he came in late, he's not feeling well. I don't feel comfortable putting him on a register. It's the humanity aspect that blows my mind. It's like, these are not difficult scenarios that we're putting in front of them to handle. This is just being human, in my opinion. And so, I had that conversation actually with my union, and this is the only thing that I'll say about my union that really rubbed me the wrong way. I was having that conversation and I was trying to explain this to the union rep, who is not our usual union rep, so I will say that. I prefaced from the very beginning of our phone call, I told her, I said, I'm autistic. Sometimes I kind of talk in a circle, as you may have noticed. Sometimes I kind of just and sometimes I told her, I might have to stop you and ask for clarification, because sometimes I might not understand something, or I might need to kind of circle back to it. And about 20 minutes into our conversation, she kept twisting everything that I was saying and saying, and to really sound like she was siding with corporate. And I didn't appreciate that. And I said, no, you're twisting my words all wrong. And she kept cutting me off as I was trying to speak. And eventually I kind of snapped on her. I said, can you please stop cutting me off? I was like, because it's not only just already hard for me to have this conversation with you, but when you keep cutting me off and I'm trying to get my words out, you're making me lose my train of thought. And I can't, bring it across to you the right way, in the way that, it went down. And, I think you're doing a disservice to me. And she goes, okay, I'll stop talking. So I said, okay, thank you. So I go and I finish my whole story, and I finish, and I was like, hello, is anyone there? And I literally sat in silence for like 2 minutes. And I was like, hello, like, and she goes, well, you told me not to talk. And I said, okay, you knew exactly what I meant when I said that. I was like, and I don't appreciate you mocking my autism when I'm telling you, you didn't have to take it so literal. You knew exactly what I was inferring. Like, if anything, I should be the one who takes things super literally,
Right.
but
Like
like,
you're just saying, let me finish.
yeah,
You know?
exactly. And as I was saying that, she cut me off again, and I snapped and I said, "You're doing it again." I was like, "You're literally cutting me off while I'm trying to explain to you that you continue to cut me off." So that, and I brought this up to one of the leaders of the union, and I said something to them, and they said, "Okay, we'll look into it." I never heard anything back about it. Never got any sort of um, feedback, and okay, sure, they might not have to necessarily share anything with me about that, but it's just disconcerting because it's like that's who I'm supposed to be going to, for any type of issues. Um, and really, the last little story I want to get into is, um, so end of February, I sat down, like I was saying, with the regional and the district manager to kind of share some of these ideas, sharing, like I was telling you about the idea of how we could set up the flow of traffic, make it a little easier, make it more manageable, and make it safer for employees and for customers. Uh, she actually said she liked that idea. She wrote it down in her notebook or whatever, but as far as I know, nothing has changed. So whatever. I mean, that was in February. We're in June now. Um, the biggest thing that I really did not like is that I also brought up to her, and this is where it really, really rubbed me the wrong way, in a bad way. Actually, can you pull up a picture of the front of our store?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Just give me a
that'll help me
moment.
kind of describe this story a little better.
Yep. Pulling it up now, my friend.
Sorry, I've just kind of been ranting.
Hey, dude. It's the great thing about podcasts. We can take the time to have these important conversations. So thank you for sitting down with me today.
Of
Um,
course.
Pulling up the Sunnyside here. And I guess for folks that are listening that haven't already gotten the point, you can watch the video version at chillinois.net/video. Here's the store.
Yeah. So, yeah, perfect. So you see how all the windows in the front are like tinted frosted glass?
Mm-hmm.
So we had it like that for the longest time. It's actually different now. Those films have been removed. Yep. So you can see it's just a normal window now. You can see clear as day.
Really?
There. Yep.
I thought
Yep.
you had to have. Hmm.
Uh, just a little tint is all you
Oh,
have to have.
okay.
But you don't have to have it completely frosted like that.
Hmm.
Um, so you have to have like a tinted window, which they do.
Hmm.
Right beyond that window is your check-in area, and you've got people getting checked in, such and such. Reason I bring this up is because I brought this up to, again, the regional and district manager, and I said, hey, something that might be of concern is that you guys have now removed, yeah, that check-in area right there. I said, you guys have now removed that frosted glass. That sidewalk right out front is a public sidewalk. And with the First Amendment, with free speech, part of that includes being able to stand on a public sidewalk and record anything that the eye can see in public. That means that if you have glass windows that are open and you can see through them, I can sit there from a public sidewalk and I can record inside as much as I want to. Okay, not a big deal. They want people to see inside. They want people to see the stuff that's going on, whatever. The problem I had is, as we were talking about earlier, me being a medical customer before being at Sunnyside and now also being a employee there. I told her, I said, I think you guys should rethink the the frosted glass, or potentially rearrange the way that you have that check-in area set up, because there's nothing stopping somebody from standing right out there, staring in and recording every medical person that walks in. That's a huge HIPAA violation, because we are taking down their name. We've got their date of birth, their address, their phone number for most of them. We've got their QP number that they get assigned for the cannabis program in Illinois. I'm like, we have all of their medical information that we are legally responsible for protecting. I could go stand out there right now and just record. She immediately shot me down on this. And I kind of pushed back, and the way that she talked down to me was so disrespectful. She said, DJ, you need to learn that you're not always going to get everything that you want. She said, you have to learn how to accept the no. And I was very confused. Again, I think I was having like an autistic moment, because I've never heard that phrase before, accept the no. I was like, and she said it so flippantly, accept the no. And I was like, what, did she skip on her words? Did she say something wrong? What, did she mean to say something else? What do you mean accept the no? Like, and I kind of dawned on me and clicked, accept the no, N-O, like I have to accept that she is saying no. I was like, what do you mean accept the no? What does that mean? I've never heard that phrase. And she goes, yeah, you're not always going to get everything that you want, and you have to drop this. And I told her, I said, I am not going to drop this, because not only is this a HIPAA violation, but this is a blatant disregard for my privacy as a medical patient as well. I'm looking out for the company, trying to save you guys from a potential lawsuit. You guys have already leaked customer information and sent out emails saying, hey, somebody opened a spam email or something like that and leaked, a good portion of people's personal information.
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, that happened last year at some point. A lot of people got emails about it.
And they
Like
got
customers.
notified that their information was potentially exposed.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct. So, and it was employees and customers too.
Yeah. And I'm no expert. I don't mean to cut you off, but I just first of all, I don't know that HIPAA covers this, because HIPAA's federal and this is a state sanctioned program, and cannabis is federally illegal. And it's weird, because this isn't a prescription. This is a recommendation. I'm not saying you
So
don't have a point. I'm not saying you don't have a point. It's just that there's a lot going on there, and I don't know if the HIPAA thing is,
sure. So and I'd actually be happy to kind of maybe weigh in on this.
Sure.
So we have to be HIPAA compliant. We actually take trainings. I don't think a lot of people know that, but we actually have to take trainings. And I don't think you have to take those trainings if you're strictly recreational.
Oh,
But we actually have, if you walk into our location, we have a plaque posted that has your HIPAA rights. And we actually have
yeah, I
people,
think
yeah, anytime you're a new medical customer, you have to sign off on a form
right.
agreeing to that agreement with us that we keep and store your personal information, medical information. And to get a medical card in Illinois, you have to have a reference from a doctor, even if it's one of those little quick minute, you have a quick Zoom 5-minute meeting with the doctor. Regardless, it's a doctor who is signing off and putting their license on the line, saying that they support your decision to consume cannabis for your medical issues. So there is, in some way, shape, or form, a medical breakdown there for medical locations such as ours. And again, like I said, to a point where they, if you're a new customer, you have to sign a form. And a lot of times they'll just have us sign it. We can ask the customer and say, hey, do you want to sign it, or do you want us just to, for you?
Yeah. And I guess the only other thing, I mean, if the fucking screens, if people can see the screens from the window, and I guess I'm looking at this, I guess maybe they could see it from the side or whatever. But I just think, like, if you use an analogy, what's happening here is not very unique. Like, for example, like people go to Walgreens and they, you can hear people like, hey, I'm picking up my prescription. My name is this. And I mean, certainly there are some things where it's like you give people space or whatever, courtesy, but I mean, I don't know. You could kind of go into a Walgreens or another pharmacy, and they don't have blurred windows or anything like that. So I'm not trying to downplay the serious concerns you have about people's data. I'm just trying to be fair and say,
Absolutely. And again, if you notice, like Walgreens, for instance, they put the pharmacy in the back corner.
right,
Never are you going to have a
not just gonna,
pharmacy that's
right.
right at the very front with no frosted
Good
windows.
point.
It's just, you just
Good point.
can't. Um, and so I
And I
think,
and I don't frequent pharmacies. I was gonna say that it is possible, I guess, there's sort of like a pharmacy etiquette where it's like you kind of give people space so that you're not like overhearing things. I don't know. I don't go to the
right,
pharmacy enough to be able to speak on that. But to
right.
your point,
And I have a video somewhere. I can't find it right now, but I actually have a video of, um, you know, the next thing that I've heard from people is like, if you don't think that this is happening already, it is. I have a video of a oh, I just found it right here. I'll send this to you too, potentially. But I have a video of that's me actually at the front check-in, and we had a lady staring us down, me and my coworker, and she just stood there and stared us down for like 10 minutes, and we had security come and shoo her away. There's him telling her to go away. And then she left and she walked away. And she kept coming back and she kept, staring, and she literally was just staring us down through the window. And actually you can see from that video that that's where it's now clear. And the
yeah,
frost has
you
been
could
taken
see
off.
right through that motherfucker.
Oh yeah, she was staring us down. And then she was outside, she was screaming, cannabis kills children. She was
At
probably
least
off
she was
a
calling it
little bit.
cannabis.
But yeah, she was
I'm
not a fan
joking.
of cannabis, let's just say that. But again, it kind of goes to my point of like, you just don't know. It is, if you're going to have a public sidewalk right there, it is within anybody's constitutional right to stand there and take
Mhm.
video, and you are opening yourself up to a potential
Yeah, I don't
lawsuit.
think that lady needed to move.
No, she
She
didn't. She
just was
didn't. She did
scared.
not have to move.
Yeah.
Security, I mean, they could try to scare her off as much as they
Right.
want, which they did. All he did was come up there and go like this, and she walked
Right.
away.
But she could fucking sit
She
down if
could
she wanted
stand there
to.
all day long if she wanted to.
Yeah.
And she has every constitutional right to do so. And that was where I had a problem and where I brought it up and why I had concern with them treating me like I was stupid. Number one, acting like I don't know what my rights are. Number one, telling me I need to drop it when that is my information as well as other customers that is potentially at risk. Like,
Hmm.
no. And number two, telling me to accept the no, that's just degrading. It's like talking down to your dog, like accept the no. You're not going to get everything you want. I'm not trying to get everything I want. I'm trying to simply protect the company. You would think that and I actually mentioned this to her and said, do you at least want to bring this concern up to somebody higher up? I know this is your sales strategy to have the window open, and she says, no, I don't need to. And I was like, you don't even want to at least have the conversation with somebody higher up and see if they agree that this might be a concern. And she tells me, no, I don't have to. We already had these conversations before we implemented this. It's already too late now. You want to hear the funny part about this whole situation? I went to my union the very next day. It might have actually been the same day. Within the same week, I get an email back from my union. I have it here too. Them saying, we talked to corporate. They said that they are going to be implementing screen protectors for those computers up front. So obviously, it blows my mind that I can be treated so poorly, talked down to so poorly. And this is not from my manager or a supervisor. This is from the regional and the district manager. These are high people pretty high up in the company who are treating me like absolute dog shit for bringing up a valid concern, trying to protect the company. So even it's like a damn you do, damn if you don't. They want to call us whiny pouty babies or whatever the fucking, phrase was. But then when we're trying to actually implement and say, hey, I have a good idea on how to make the place run smoother. I have a good idea on how to save you from a potential lawsuit. We're still getting talked down to, still getting treated like crap. And obviously they did realize that I was right in some regard, because if they had realized that I was just, if they would have died on that hill and said I was totally wrong, do you think they would have been implementing those screen guards? No, not at all. And this is again within a week. And I'm sure I could actually pull up the exact dates and times and everything of the email I sent to the union to when I got the response back from them saying, hey, that's being implemented. Why did I have to be subjected to being talked down to? And now I'm supposed to go and work with these people and treat them as leaders. I mean, they're supposed to be like my leaders within the company. How am I supposed to have respect for people like that want to treat me like that, talk down to me like that? And then, when I'm trying to bring up very valid arguments or points or concerns, like I said, it's really a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Nothing really ever seems to get done. I actually had a coworker come up to me and tell me, uh, and they only told me this because they also have a disability and they didn't like this. I had two AICs in the back break room that were talking poorly about me and my disability. That's a huge no-no, huge legal no-no. I'm actually pretty sure when we took our ADA like training, our discrimination harassment training, that we have to take every year, pretty sure that exact scenario was brought up. And we had to go through and do the whole training for it. And yet I have a coworker come up to me and say, hey, these two AICs are talking shit about you and your disability right now. I go and I tell a manager, they confirm that that actually is true. They bring one of the managers in, and that manager apologizes, but that manager wasn't the one who was saying everything. They were apparently just listening, whatever that means. And so I get the confirmation that not only did this occur, but then apparently they were going to have a talk with the other manager that was saying this stuff. That guy is still employed there. And it makes it uncomfortable. This all goes back to how you handle these situations. At what point do I have any say in my comfortability within the workplace? I have accommodations that are being denied. Even the accommodations that are approved I'm being written up for.
Not being
I
honored.
have,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Not honored. Exactly right. I'm being disrespected and talked down to when I bring up good ideas. I'm getting hypocritical statements saying, we want you to wear headphones, but if you have a disability and you need headphones, that's out the window. You know, no transparency with like situations with the bathroom, what's going on with it? Why can't we get it fixed? It's been over a year now. Specialty parts, like it's a bionicle or something. I mean, I used to love playing with bionicles and putting them together and popping the sockets in place and all that. Apparently, this is like the bionicle of toiletry. I don't understand it. It's like it's thing after thing after thing. You have managers, and that actually wasn't even the first time that happened. I had somebody come and tell me that a manager was talking shit about me and my disability. And you know what they were actually saying? They said, I wish that I could make my own schedule and I can just come in whenever I want. Like that's something that I want to have
Yeah, you like having this condition.
control over. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I just love having Crohn's and dealing with all the stuff
The
that
curveballs that it
exactly,
Crohn's
all the
throws
things
me.
that people don't even know about. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You think I liked being in the hospital for the past 2 months and having this giant scar now down my belly for the rest of my life because of a disability that I had no control over.
This might be a weird question, but can you show me it?
Oh,
Or
yeah, yeah,
are you
yeah, absolutely,
uncomfortable with that?
yeah.
Okay.
It's I'm kind of hiding it a little bit, but it
Yeah.
kind of goes from here all the way down.
Wow.
Um,
Damn, dude.
Yeah. And I'm still recovering. I mean, that's why I'm not at work right now. I've got another 2 weeks before I'm going to be back. Um,
Damn.
and it just, and it brings up the question of like, why, not only why would I want to go back and continue to be subjected to that, but why would anybody who hasn't worked within the industry want to come into it fresh and experience all of this?
Yeah. If you see me squirming over here, it's because I don't like medical injuries anyway. I don't know why I asked you to show me, but I was just curious. You gave me the impression it was serious, and goddamn, that's a big cut, bro.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, to be totally transparent, I'm not going to go to TMI, but it was rough, like I don't think a lot of people understand like that was the end goal. That was the very final process of it. But to get there, they had to install a tube. I actually have two other scars. One
Mm.
one was inserted between my rib cage. Fucking sucked.
God
Every time
damn.
I breathed, it sucked. I had to sleep like a vampire. I couldn't roll on either side because I had tubes, one tube on my right side through my rib cage, and another one on my left side, kind of near my hip. And it was long, rubbery tubes. And at the end of them, it was like a little ball, kind of like a squeezy exercise ball, but
Mm-hmm.
it was empty and full of air and had a little pop off. And it would fill, you would squeeze it tight and then put the cap back on, and that would create a vacuum to suck this, nastiness. I'll leave it at that. This
Yeah.
nastiness out, and then that ball would fill up with fluid. And I had it on both sides, and I was in the hospital for months. No food, by the way, no food. I was on a
God
clear liquid
damn.
diet, Gatorade, chicken broth, and I couldn't even eat crackers, and Jello. God, I never want to look at Jello ever again in my fucking life.
I bet.
I've had every fucking goddamn color
Of
combination of
Jello,
Jello you
yeah.
could possibly think of. Oh, anyways, um, but yeah, it's just it blows my mind because it's like, why would anybody want to be subjected to those types of conditions coming in? Again, you go into it with the expectation of I'm gonna go and I'm gonna have a great job where I can sell cannabis to people, just have a great fucking time. And there are some days where I'm just having a great time with people and doing that. And then, it's all the other stuff just makes it not worth it. I'd rather just sit at home and fucking smoke my fucking joints or whatever, take an edible, take a freaking giant ass glob of RSO and drift into the couch and not have to deal with all that shit, you know? And it's just, yeah, it just blows my mind that this is what we're going through. And I commented on like the podcast last night. We were talking a little bit about the some of like the tax stuff, coming into it. I don't really know what their goal is. I think you had commented and said something about along the lines of you're not sure if the deal is even going to be finalized between Columbia and Cresco,
Yeah.
the acquisition. They really obviously are trying to make it seem like
And in
that's
fact, one of the, like the top leading well, she was a regulator in Massachusetts. She's like a huge policy person. Responded to a tweet I made about that last night, and
yeah.
she predicted that yeah, it's not going to go through.
I don't think so either.
I trust
I
her word.
mean, and it sucks because I was looking forward to it as an employee. Uh, I think they actually have this listed as a benefit, so I don't think it's wrong for me to talk about this. But as a employee benefit, you actually get stock in the company,
Right. Right.
not our location, because for whatever reason, when the people were negotiating our contract with the union, they
Didn't
decided let's toss that out. I don't know why the fuck they would do that, but they did.
probably to get something else.
I
Give
don't know
yeah,
what
give
else because
that away to get that.
we have less
Oh,
shit than other fucking locations within the same company. We have less benefits. So I don't know what we don't have access to a parking lot. We don't, I mean, it's just so much shit that we don't have access to or don't have the same benefits as other locations. And it seems like we really got the short end of the stick even having a union at this location. But yeah, I was again, if I had had stock in the company, I would want that to go through, even though it's the Canadian stock market. I would think that once it finalizes, typically any type of acquisition, I'm no tax or stock expert or anything, but typically when stocks, when companies will do an acquisition like that, the stocks will have a pretty steep drop off. And once it finalizes and things are kind of cement and you start seeing some growth again, you start seeing that incline pretty sharp. Um, I'm pretty sure it's actually saying within Cresco's numbers that they've been at like a $500 million loss last year. It was like 0.62 or something like that $1 billion loss on their margins. They're not even going to be profitable for another 2 years. I think they said 2024, 2025, something like that, before it's even a profitable company. So I get 100%, that's why they had to do it based off the valuation of their stocks. That was where they were getting, and then COVID happened, and their stock just literally fucking tanked after COVID and some other things, that happened in the marketplace. Inflation shooting up. I think that was one of the major things. And their stock price just had never really recuperated that loss. And the valuation that they had negotiated the deal originally for, but didn't have the funds for that fucking deal. Now they're just they keep getting inching further and further away from their goal, and it really sucks because I know, like Ethan, I think mentioned this yesterday, but we as the employees have really taken the brunt of that, having less management, less AICs, less materials available to us in stores, because they're trying to finalize this deal that's likely not even going to fucking go through. Like, and at the end of the day, even if we had stock in it, we're not going to see that come to fruition. We're not going to see any increase in our margins, if we're vested and we want to, cash out for what? It's just, again, it makes it so it's like, why would I want to come to work at a place where I'm going to be sexually harassed, not taken seriously? I have disabilities. They're not taken seriously. You have a building that's practically falling apart. And I don't know if I actually mentioned this, but a manager even told me at some point within this past year that they were thinking about selling. They're thinking about selling that building already because it's already costing them so much fucking money.
Yeah, gotta have a
And I
fucking
don't
the plumber and those parts, man.
just the fucking plumbers alone. It's crazy. I mean, God, hiring a plumber multiple times a week, I can't even imagine the fucking bill that
Might
they've
as
had.
well
I mean,
just hire a fucking plumber.
listen, I know I mentioned it once, but I was a manager for 2 years, so I am very well aware of signing off on every fucking invoice that came in for parts, for services. I had a coworker that broke a window once. I had to call somebody so that we had to tape up the window, and then I had to call somebody to come and like fix the window. And like, I mean, I've dealt with shit like that before, so I understand that it can be costly. But goddamn, like at what? Oh Lord, like and I actually brought that up to managers, I think at one point, and I said, hey, like I've been in your shoes, I've signed those invoices. At what point are you guys sick and tired of pissing away money on having plumbers come? And I don't know if this has changed yet, but since my last day I was there a few months ago, they had a standing order with a plumbing company to come once a week. I think it was like once every Thursday or something, to come and just uh what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of as a preemptively assuming that there's going to be an issue, they would just clear out the sewer drains in the floor. And so they had a guy come every Thursday, go to town. And so every morning I come in on a Thursday, I see a guy in there, going to town in the floor. And I'm like, okay, it's just another fucking Thursday at this point. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling on.
Yeah, well, I feel like we've covered it basically, covered it all. I mean, I guess the last thing we should make clear, if you want to, if you, if, I specifically asked you if you wanted to talk about this, and you said yes. So you mentioned you've got a meeting set up in 2 weeks. Do you want to lay that out as we close the show? What that looks like, or would you rather not talk about it?
I don't care. I've said it before. I mean, until I sign something from them saying I can't talk about it, I'm gonna tell people like, I mean, we already kind of got into the details of it, but I encourage anybody, if you feel like you're being taken advantage of or that your accommodations that you have, whether they're verbal or on file, are being denied unfairly or being uh, gone against, you have every right. Use the federal channels that are there available to you. I've reached out to the EEOC. It's a very long process though, and especially Illinois. Something's going on in Illinois with a lot of employers, not just obviously Sunnyside or cannabis, but they're backed up. I mean, I had somebody reach out to me from Milwaukee. Um, they're having to call in other states' EEOC offices to handle some of their cases because they're just so backlogged. I've talked with a disability lawyer, attorney about this, and she was the one who actually told me about the backlog that's in Illinois. And she's been dealing with a lot of that. She's given me a ton of really good advice and is helping me with this case. Um, Potentially, I'll give you a little plug for her company. It's called Equip for Equality. It's a nonprofit. So if anybody, has a disability and they just even want to talk and have a conversation, it's totally free to reach out to them. Um, and it's centered here in Illinois specifically, which is another great thing, especially if you're in the cannabis industry and have a disability. Because I'm assuming that Sunnyside is not unique to that experience. They're not the only ones that are trying to hire people that have disabilities so they can relate to the customers easier. Um, so, again, Equip for Equality. You don't have to tell them I sent you because it's not like that. But they are more than happy to send you just a plethora of resources, things to look at, things to go over. They'll strategize with you about how to go about things, what to ask for, templates if you need a template on how to ask for certain things, like even your employee personnel file. If you want to ask for it but you don't know how, she'll give you the exact law to quote, and she actually gives you a template. Sorry, that has the exact quoted law in there for the Illinois legislature. And it's a super great resource to have. And in my case, uh, I have a potential meeting set up with them in a few weeks to kind of go over all of this stuff. They've agreed to mediate with me and potentially come to some type of agreement. What that will be, I don't know. Will it be anything at all? I don't know. Um, that obviously is going to come down to them. But, at this point, I'm at a point where I'm like, hey, I have free speech just as much as they do. And as long as I'm not lying about anything or exaggerating anything beyond,
Yeah.
reason, I'm going to speak my truth, and I'm going to tell exactly what happened because I have the receipts. I actually keep copies of everything. And as much as they don't want to give those copies, I will demand it because I know I'm entitled to them. Um, and so I've kept very meticulous records of every single email, every single document that has occurred between me and the company. And I'm ready to go into that meeting to basically, lack of a better term, put it all on the table and just kind of say like, hey, I think that you're in the wrong for the way that I've been treated in this situation. And I think that there needs to be some accountability for that, because if I can't get that accountability on the store level with the management group that's there, um, then I'm gonna have to call him Big Brother. you know, it is what it is. I'm gonna call in whoever I need to because as I've mentioned before, I don't think this is a cannabis unique situation. I think that this is across the country. People are dealing with these types of situations and these issues, and they're fed up. Honestly, I hear it every single day. People are fed up. People can't I go grocery shopping. I can't freaking afford basic groceries. It cost me $200 to go feed myself for a week. And yet I'm making, 19 and a half dollars an hour. And that's another thing. I mean, I've fought tooth and nail so many times with the union and with the company because our current agreement is set up to give us a standard 3% raise every year. So we went from making like 18 and a half dollars last year to 19 and a half this year, and so on for the next 2 years, I think, until our contract is up. And and uh and again, I'm totally protected to talk about my pay. I could
Yeah.
talk to my pay to whoever wants to know it. I think there are places. There's a place in Michigan, Spring Lakes or something like that. They make like $30 an hour as
Yeah.
a business advisor. There are places out there that make way more money doing the same types of jobs. So for them to give us some, bullshit answer of, oh, well, it's because of the contract, it's because of this. And you had even mentioned like, oh, well, maybe we cut out some stuff to get other things. You'd have to show me in our contract where, because if in the way I look at it, we have less rights than other places. At least if I was non-unionized, I could hold that over their head and say, hey, if you don't want to give us the pay we're asking for, we're going to unionize and we're going to demand that pay or we're going to strike. But now our hands are tied because we are already unionized. We have a provision. They're saying we can't strike. We can't do anything about it. We're, for lack of a better term, completely powerless besides having outlets like this to be able to share our stories and say, hey, you know, um, do with this knowledge as you will.
Yeah.
This is how the employees are treated, and the employees are here. The employees are probably, again, look at the reviews. They're the best part of the business, in my opinion, and in other people's opinions as well. We're fighting for the customers, even though we're getting shit on daily from our management and from the higher management. We're fighting tooth and nail for customer rights, our rights, better treatment, better quality, better everything. And we just continue to get shit on. And it's like, why does this have to be the case? We just want this to be what you are setting the expectation and telling everybody it's going to be.
Yeah.
You bring us in and tell us, that you want this to be a new kind of cannabis experience. I think is pretty close to what they're
Yeah. New kind of cannabis experience, as in get in, get the fuck out. Give me your money.
Yeah, well, yeah. I guess that is new because it's never been done in cannabis before. But
Yeah.
July
Usually you have
had
to
that
strike
years
up
ago.
conversation, all that good stuff. But no.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, hey, dude, I hope that by taking advantage of the platform that it does help in some way. I'd like to think that it does. So I just want to thank you for being willing to come out and speak, um, given everything. And I have to agree with your logic that you have just as much of a right to speak as they do on this. And that'll be an interesting thing. I do actually plan to reach out to them just in another spirit of fairness to see if they have anything to say about their bathrooms or any of the other allegations or experiences that have been shared on the show. So I'll be doing that soon. I'm going to be talking to a few more of your coworkers, but before we
I encourage
go,
anyone really reach out. I mean, at this point,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think,
You know what, listeners, if you don't, like call Sunnyside and ask them about it right
yeah,
now.
hold them accountable.
Yeah.
There's power to the people. There's
So
strength in numbers, and if we can't get it
go
done,
stand next to the window with a sign that says, "Where's the toilet?" I'm just joking. Maybe you guys don't want that, but hey, maybe that would make all
honestly,
the
I
people
would
laugh.
get the biggest fucking laugh out of it. I
Just the
might even have to come bring you a joint on when I clock out.
fuck yeah. Fuck
just
yeah.
just for doing something like that, because honestly it's like, I don't know where we're at this point. Like, how much further do we have to go to get the people on our side to say, hey, let's pump the brakes a little bit on the big corporate guns and take a step back and realize, this is a people first business. you know um and we need to take care of not just the people that we employ, but the people that we're selling to.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
definitely encourage that. Anybody that's listening, Anybody that wants to reach out, we're all here trying to make a difference, and truthfully, I think that goes for not just our store, but for any cannabis store in the state. Like we all want the same things. We all want it to be federally legal. We all want cannabis to be, not a taboo thing anymore. It helps so many people. And it's beyond time for that to happen. And
Yeah.
and companies doing this kind of bullshit is just gonna set us back. Really is.
Oh yeah, they're setting. I mean, that's kind of the issue here. It's the elephant in the room is that the way they set this market up is anti-consumer. So all the things you're talking about, like, yeah, you're right. They didn't set it up for the consumer. They set it up to get money in because they don't report to the consumer. They report to their shareholders. Like you say, they got to make that money back. They want to be profitable, baby. How do we do that? We limit
Yep.
licenses, we inflate the value of our prices, and we shut out competition. We don't let people grow at home, all those different things that are antithetical, like you say, to the cannabis movement. So, well, hey,
Definitely. Of
I got a wrap, man.
course.
We had a really good chat today, and I want to thank you
Sure.
again for setting aside time in your day to do this. So,
Of
I wish
course.
you the
Thank you.
best of luck in your future, and please keep in touch.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate having the platform. So
Absolutely. Well, folks, I hope you found as much value in this episode as I did. We'll see you in the next episode of the Chill Illinois podcast. Take care, everybody.